Hello. Do not adjust your streaming screens unless, of course, they need adjustment because you are having a crisis. It is I, Crisis with a K, as I am known throughout the internet, and I am here to talk to you about surprise comic books. I'm here to talk about the comic books that were out last week on the 16th of April. And before we get into me reviewing every single one of them, because I read over 45 of them, guess what? There's a thing that we do first, and it is my top 12 comic series of 2025 so far, of my own custom algorithm that I put together to help me calculate such things. So let's set the timer and get right to it. These are my top series so far. Back in at number 12, because there was a new issue this week and we are going to talk about it, is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by Jason Aaron and Juan Ferreira. The art is so cool. I can't wait to share it with you. Then everything else from there pretty much unchanged. This was number 12 last week. It is now number 11, The Green Lantern Corps. Then we have Ghost Box, which has its final issue out in 2 weeks on Comixology Originals. Jump Scare, which is a delightful horror superhero that I highly recommend, by Cullen Bunn, Danny Luckert, and Jim Campbell. Then we have Doctor Strange of Asgard, which looks nothing like this cover because Carlos Mango and as colorist Grutengern does the interior art. Then we have the Tin Can Society from Peter Warren, Francesco Mobley, and Chris Chuckry from Giant Generator. Absolute Superman, Jason Aaron doing Hope Corps. The Power Fantasy, which has a new issue out next week. Jed McKay's Avengers. Then at the very top, we have Nice House by the Sea, My Whole Personality, as we've established. Number 2, Batman Dark Patterns. And still number 1, and going nowhere fast, it is FML by Kelly Sue DeConnick, David Lopez, Chris Peter, and Clayton Cowles, my favorite comic of 2025 so far. But that's not all, folks. That is not all, because we really try to keep it real fast, real pumping at the beginning of the show. So now we're going to talk about my picks of the week. And let me tell you, my DC pick of the week, this was murder. I assumed it would be Zatanna because Jamal Campbell, really charming, and I loved the Zatanna issue. Do not get me wrong. We are going to talk about it if you last until the end of the alphabet. But after a lengthy deliberation that I did not have time for this morning, I went with DC X Sonic the Hedgehog. It was that good, but it was a tight competition. I at one point had Nightwing in here, and at one point, this is going to shock you, but you're going to stay around until the end of the alphabet. At one point, I had Wonder Woman in here. What? Tom King, Wonder Woman, my pick of the week? What is happening? Okay, but then the Marvel pick of the week, I thought maybe Star Wars Legacy of Vader, because, you know, I don't really like the Marvel superhero books right now. No, I hated this book. I actually picked Superior Avengers, which I thought was going to be probably my least favorite Marvel pull of the week. What is happening? What is happening? Then my Image pick of the week, I thought would be Rogue Sons. I picked it up at the issue 25, and I thought it was really cool. I thought this issue was really cool too, but what is happening? My pick of the week is Rob Liefeld Young Blood Deluxe. And Indie, I thought my pick would be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and surprise, it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah, I'm not going to sing. So, I mean, I am going to sing. Who are we kidding? I'm just not going to sing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles song right now. So I hope you're all well. Happy Easter for those of you who celebrate, and for those of you where the day is still Easter around the world. I'm just going to adjust some things here while I greet you. It is the day after Easter here in New Zealand. Good Monday, I don't know what it's called religiously, but it's another holiday, and it's actually like a real holiday here. Like the grocery stores are closed. That's how you can tell when it's a real holiday in New Zealand. If you can't get groceries, it is a real holiday. So I don't even know if I could go to the mall today. I don't even know what I'm going to do myself. Maybe we'll just talk for 8 hours on stream. No. But I am starting to have an inkling of maybe doing like an ultra long one later this year with all my free time, right? Right now, there's no free time because I'm working on a lot of polls for our friends in Near Mint Condition. Right now, the Omnibus reprint poll is still running. And soon, very, very soon, the Tiger Eyes Most Wanted Marvel Omnibus poll begins in about a week. And oh boy, do we have some excitement for you there. But wait, the next thing I do here, it's not talk about all those things. It's say hello to everybody from the comments. Now, I know some of you are doing family stuff right now, so I completely appreciate that. Do not feel pressure. This will live in eternity on the internet long after we're all gone, and YouTube will still exist. So if you can't watch live right now, I totally understand, but let's just say hello. Let's just say hello. That's not even a New Zealand accent. To those who are watching, Rapto Rapture wishing me happy Easter. Super Job, one of our most regulars, early comment crew go, which means 2 people have beat Bunk today. This is the lowest if we get a commenter earliness power ranking. Bunk would now be number 3, his lowest position so far. in 2025. Mall 360 is going to have to miss this one because he's picking up his spouse at the airport. A totally fine and appropriate mission for this day. Patrick Borgeld says, keep calm. I have some time left. This was me at 2 a.m. last night saying I had run out of time. And then I woke up at 6:30 a.m. and I still ran out of time. What is sleep? A fifth of Jack Gaming saying happy Easter to everyone. Won't be able to catch live, but that's okay. Family is an important thing, as in addition to comics, if you did not know. Stoops saying Easter bunny flower heart. We love it. I love Stoops's profile picture. It goes very well with the whole purple theme of everything on this channel. Really love it. Jean-Remy Agueta won't be able to catch this live, which is a bummer, only because I love John Remy's reactions to things, but I know that they will probably watch later. We have Earth Geomancer, Cruel Angel, who I enjoy sparring with, not really sparring, so we mostly agree, over the course of the week in our various Discords that we are both members are. If I'm not mistaken, it is you, Cruel Angel, who's doing a reread of David Max Kabuki right now. Am I remembering that correctly? A book that I've always coveted because it's gorgeous, but I'm like, are you really going to read it, Krisis? Are you really going to read it? Who else? John Pauls is here, who reminds me to do my vocal warm-ups. That's the only way I can say my R's correctly at this time of the morning. Reading the new Gotham Rucka, the new Gotham Rucka era at the moment. I love the coloring. Ooh, yeah, true. And then we were talking about how I look like a totally subhuman monster at that midpoint of me getting ready. I'm on a group chat with a bunch of the people who guest on OmniDog's Vault so that we can coordinate us guesting, I suppose. I can't ever be on at the same times as them. So I think I'm just there to be like their weird old friend. And so last week, as I was getting ready for New Condition with all of 22 minutes on the clock, I was sending them progress photos. And I really do look like Pennywise. This looks like a normal human being, maybe kind of, sort of. I don't know how well I did today, but there is a Pennywise stage that happens every time on the way to this, which they were all having a good old laugh at. James Abel is here. Brain tissue paper. I started to confess the power of my hair, and it overwhelmed the internet. Now it's giving me low internet sign. We don't love that for us. It seems like it's rebuilding. I have a feeling that the internet is going to be problematic today. I just feel it in my bones that we're going to have a problematic internet day. Now it says it's totally back to normal. I just think it's going to be problematic today. So we'll see. There's 45 books to talk about. I'm sure I'll make it. Mr. Awesome. Hello, everybody. Hello to you, Mr. Awesome. Is that Becca Scott in your profile picture? It looks an awful like Becca Scott, who has the video game channel and she's on Dropout. Anyway, William Lee. Hair going to be fired. I think it looks pretty good. I've given up going to the pool on Mondays because then you don't know what you're going to get. So but my point being is I don't do very much. I put a very gentle hold in it before I go to sleep and I put it in a bun and then it comes out how it comes out, just with gentle hold. Because if there's no hold, it gets bigger and bigger, especially. It's been very muggy here lately. Mr. Awesome asking how we're all doing. I'm fine. Thanks for asking. James Abel, Black Box Comics. So they are the producer of Catabasis, which I am obsessed with. And issue number 5 came out this week with spoilers. It was not on Global Comics as of 2 a.m. last night, New Zealand time. But everybody, please go to Global Comics and read Catabasis. This is one of my favorite books of 2025. It's just, I love it because it introduces a big idea at the top, which is like there's this secret agent carrying things, items, souls between heaven and hell. She's very Black Widow coded, but not in a ripoff way. She just kind of like feels like that kind of character. She's been kind of like a spy, and now she's the secret agent between heaven and hell. And then it sets up that big thing, and then it's just all action. It's just like an action movie from that forward. And I love that because it's not trying to do everything all at once, which I think a lot of comics, big label entity comics, try to do all of the things all at once. We're going to give you the big heaven and hell backstory, and then we're going to try to do some action, and then it just comes out like a muddle. Catabasis knows what it is, and I know that I love it. So sorry, Black Box Comics, no reviews of your comics today, but feel free to start comping me digital copies so I can tell everybody about them, because I have been pimping Catabasis real darn hard for the past week. Darn, there's only so many shelves. I moved them over here because you all never get to see them over there. Every time a new epic comes in, I got to do the, So we're doing what we can. James the Medium Answer is here. Max Album in here. Max loves a fast pump. Logan Wayne is here. and unfortunately can't stick around, but that's fine. It's, you know what, there's like now a solid probably 25 of you whose names and profile pictures I know so well that if you don't show up for like a week or two, I start being like, uh-oh, are they okay? And I don't have any way to, I just know, you just have a YouTube profile. I don't have any way to contact you unless I know you on like Discord or something. So a couple weeks ago, I won't blow up anybody's spot, but somebody, one of you, was absent for a couple of weeks, which it doesn't bother me like, oh no, pay attention to me. I just literally get worried about you because the world is weird, y'all. I don't know what could have happened to you. James is pointing out that the out-of-print Marvel Omnibus poll ends in 2 days American time. You only get 5 votes, but that's to vote for any Marvel Omnibus that is currently out of print. I was on the announcement stream with Omar and Taylor Talks Comics, and I love hanging out with Taylor Talks Comics. I just feel like I get along with him so well. We had so much fun together. I mean, I was in rare form. I think I had no sleep. I put the face on in 22 minutes. So if you haven't seen the launch stream for that, it is on Near Mint Conditions channel. Always an Instigator is here. Hello. I love the episode of Black Mirror for Peter. Loves a Tom King book. Always Instigator. I don't know what it was 2 a.m. So maybe I just was not in my right mind, but we won't know unless I reach the end of the alphabet. Andrew Wuda. Why have I never had this much trouble with this before? Wuda Voida. Really enjoyed Trip 66. Yes, one of my Philly favorite bands. I've been singing it non-stop for the past couple of weeks because I recommended it all to you. And then you all checked it out from an Omnidog stream. And so I've been listening to it a lot, which I mean, I know it by heart at this point, but I haven't necessarily, I just can't get my power to turn on, which is eventually going to be a problem for us. I just haven't listened to it that much for the past few years. And that one, baby, baby, my one desire. I love that. I could just sing it endlessly. But there's a lot of good songs in that record. Fiend is another really good one. I did find that somebody has a YouTube playlist of them, but they're like not on streaming or anything because their record is like so old that it's like, who even knows who owns the rights to that record? So nobody has like monetize it and put it on Spotify's people. Okay, I think I've maybe said hello to all of the distinct human beings. Oh, there's TaylorMade. Always a pleasure to see my beautiful face. And as we know, flattery gets you where on this channel? Everywhere. And Black Box Comics is getting number 5 on Global Comics this week. Make sure you check out Devil's Dominion and Gin Hunter. Done. We will be checking those out in the coming weeks. And Michael Westlius is here as well. So here's a problem. We're just here. We're just hanging out. It's just friends. It's just Easter or White Monday or whatever it's called. And we're just hanging out. So I have a weighted blanket is the only way I could go to sleep. And actually, I sleep so well now. I historically in my life, there we go, have never been much of a sleeper. I always like wake up for any reason and I don't get a lot of sleep. Weighted blanket, I could take a nap in a minute. This is not sponsored. I mean, I could refer you to my weighted blanket. But I'm obsessed with it. But here's the thing. It's so heavy. And I have the kind with the little glass beads in it. And this has nothing to do with your comment, Michael. I have the kind with the little glass beads in it, which means it kind of like pulls at the edges of each panel, that it actually has like a tensile grip strength at the end of the panel. So if you like drag it across the bed or it like dangles down on the floor, it will just pick up things and drag it with them. So if I have anything lying near the bed and I like adjust in my sleep with the blanket, the blanket, like some kind of crazy octopus, like goes and picks up the thing. And last night it picked up my computer power cord. So it's a wonder I even woke up this morning. And I woke up and I was like, where is the power cord? I'm like looking under the bed, looking next to the bed, like where did it go? And it's like in bed with me, wrapped in the weighted blanket. And the moral of that story is, I don't know. It could have been destroyed. It could have been torn apart. I don't know if it was partially digested by my weighted blanket. I have no idea. Okay, let's just remind everybody what we do here. I do a moment of crisis, which I think I know what I'm going to talk about today because I actually thought ahead and brought a prop with me that is down here. So it is somewhat planned. The reason I was 3 minutes late was I was running to get the prop. Then we talk about then you can ask me anything. We're not going to go super, super long with the Ask Me Anything, but you can ask me about comics, New Zealand, lip gloss, what my opinion of the new winner of Drag Race is, whatever you want to do. And then we are going to talk about all the new comics out this week, of which I think I read 45, somewhere around 45. But we're going to go through all the covers, even the ones I didn't get to read, like Catabasis, because they didn't hit digital yet, but that's fine. We're still going to talk about them. And then at the end, depending on how we feel, there might be a song. So let's do our Moment of Krisis. So a few of you these past few weeks have been asking me if I can kind of go off on tariffs. And I just feel like the tariff situation is so fluid still. I mean, it's literally changing within a day's worth of headlines that I cannot possibly speak intelligently about the impact of tariffs because we don't even know what tariffs are going to impact what right now. I mean, literally countries, it's completely reversed in the past week. But what we can already start seeing is not all about tariffs, not all about politics. So this is a political channel. Get used to it. I'm a liberal person and we talk about politics, but that's not what this is about. So tariffs, even with the current uncertainty, there are certain industries who are pretty sure that they are having a messed up time of it. And that's really affecting already the prices of things because they have to start to anticipate what might happen. And affecting the price of things means it affects the price of things for us as a consumer, which we worried about from a budgetary standpoint. But this week I was thinking about it as I read some terrible comics about the standpoint of return on investment or utility for cost, right? And so there's this board game that I love that is called Spirit Island. Now, Spirit Island was originally a much more complex, larger board game that is one of the top-rated games on Board Game Geek. I love it. You play as the indigenous people on an island, much like a Polynesian island like New Zealand, and you drive off the colonizers with the powers of your beliefs. It has a modular board, so it's always different. It has like a rogue-like deck building mechanism, super, super cool. But this was kind of expensive. So they made a smaller version that has lighter components, and that would be more easy for people to pick up at retail. Although this is still, I think, retails for about $50. But it's just like the board is not as modular, but it plays the same, and you can actually interchange these two boxes with each other and combine their stuff, which of course I love because I love collecting things. I bring this up because that board game company and they're called Greater Than Games, laid off all of their staff this over the weekend, saying, because as I noticed as I was looking at this to get ready, it says made in China. And so all of their board games are primarily produced in China. And with an uncertain future of tariffs looming, they could not necessarily say that they were going to sustain. So this company with one of the most popular board games in the world just folded because of the hint that tariffs are going to change the market for their game and potentially make their game cost more than 100% more because the tariff on China is huge. And tariffs, of course, aren't always just about things coming in one direction, because then if China needs a part for a factory that's tariffed from another tariff country, the whole tariff go around just inflates and inflates and inflates. And we're seeing that in America right now. There are some things that are produced in America that the tariffs wouldn't affect them because they're produced in America, but they need parts or machinery or something that the tariff affects getting into America. And so the price of the thing will still go up. I also saw that Mack Truck of Lehigh Valley from Pennsylvania, where I am originally from, just had a huge reduction in staff because people don't know what's going to go on with trucking of goods. Which brings me to comic books, because I told you this was more about utility of cost and not about tariffs. So this, let's just say this is $50. I don't know how much it is American because I bought it in New Zealand. This game, I've gotten way more than 50 minutes of this. I probably play it for 15 minutes every time I play it. Kid Krisis just gets it up and sets it up for fun. We've played with this and the big one with guests multiple times who've come over the house. Board games have an extremely high return on investment. They have a high utility. So like even when you see a really expensive deluxe board game out there and it's like $99 and you're like, for a board game, if you play that 3 or 4 times, it's already starting to pay you back. People think about this in video games all the time. They want either really long video games or they want video games with a high utility in terms of replay value, because maybe the video game was $80, but if you play it for 80 hours, you were only putting $1 into the slot for every hour imaginarily, because there's no slot really in the front of your Switch or whatever. And so it had a very high utility for those $80. And that's how I generally feel about board games and why I will splurge on board games, although I don't have that much room. So it's really definitely like one new one a year. So it's pretty tight. I will splurge on board games because they have a very high return on investment. For even if I spent a combined $200 in all of Spirit Island, which again, I don't know, it's totally paid off. I am completely confident with that. I was thinking about that this week because of comic books. Comic books have been holding the line around $3.99 for a few years right now, but some have already jumped to $4.99 just to add like a page or two. Like they're 25 story pages for $4.99. Think about how long does it take you to read those comics, whether you buy them floppy or digital, and how many times might you go back and reread that single comic? I do not reread single comics very often. To me, they are largely disposable, and then often I will go back to them for research purposes, but I'm not going to read them as a single comic again. There was a comic this week, a few actually, that were $4.99, so $5, and I finished them in less than 5 minutes. Not because I was speeding through, because there was nothing really of interest happening in those comics. A few of them are series that I usually really, really like. One of them I'll call out now is Ultimate Wolverine. I thought that comic, I was offended. I would have liked to have a refund. We will scream about it later. But I was so viscerally angry that they charged me $4.99 to read this comic that there was nothing to it. All I got out of it was a data page. Anyway, we'll save the anger for later. And it really made me think about the utility of comics. It's not just they are expensive. Like a thing can be expensive. A board game that's $99 is expensive. A comic that is $5 maybe feels less expensive. That's about the same as a breakfast sandwich. You can give up a breakfast sandwich or a coffee or have a comic. So the absolute expense of the comic might seem still pretty low as it goes from $3.99 to $4.99, and I'm sure very soon we're going to start seeing ones that are $5.99 or more, not because anything about them got more expensive yet, but just because of the uncertainty of the economic environment and the fact that things might get more expensive. Companies will just go ahead and build in that extra cost now because they can. So maybe it's not that expensive in absolute terms, but I start to wonder, is it the right price for the return on investment? Is it the right price for the utility? Because if I am spending $4.99 for a comic that took me less than 5 minutes to read, I am paying $1 a minute for the privilege of reading that comic. That is why I tell all of you, this show is just so I can be a crazy person and tell you about what comics are good. And then you should subscribe to Marvel Unlimited, DC Unlimited, and Global Comics so that you can basically have a set budget and read almost all of these things. Throw in Comixology Unlimited too. And basically there's only going to be a few companies with outside of your grasp, and you will have spent a fixed budget of right around, I think that would be a little under or a little over $200 for the whole year to read as many comics as you want to read. And I'm sure you could spend more than 200 minutes reading comics. So immediately that is more valuable than the cost benefit that I am getting from them, paying $5 for a single issue that took me less than 5 minutes to read. And as we know, digital comic prices are tied to physical comic prices because companies do not want their digital comics to be stealing customers from the local comic store. So even though we get less utility from a digital comic, we don't get something we can touch, feel, or permanently own. We don't even get a DRM-free copy. They are priced exactly the same, at least on the day that they come out, as the physical comics. Now, usually the digital comics will go down in price $1 or $2 after a couple of weeks because then the competition with the local comic store is not that much. But for a Wednesday warrior like me, I am paying the same price as physical, and that physical price is going to go up either because of tariffs or in anticipation of tariffs, and it's going to be the same damn comic books that I'm buying month after month. So what I'm coming to here is there were some books that I read today that I said, you know what, in a world where this book gets $1 more expensive, I will not read this book anymore. And it's not just the worst books. It's not just the books that I scream about every week. Some of them are just books that are fine, but the idea of now paying $6 for a comic that will only take me maybe 5 or 6 minutes to read, I just don't know if I can stomach that. And that's not to say that every comic takes that long. There were comics this week that took me 14 minutes to read, 20 minutes to read. That starts to make sense. But at the time that we're being asked to spend more than $1 a minute to engage in this hobby, there's a lot of things that I could do for $1 a minute. That's, then I start thinking about like skydiving. How long did it take me to get to the ground from skydiving? Like 7 minutes, and that was like $300. So that was really expensive, but I liked skydiving a lot more than I liked reading some of these comics. So I guess, as usual, I don't have a big summation here. I guess I just to say, I never felt so acutely before this moment that I really had to think about the utility of buying comic books, even collections, even omnibuses, DC Finest, Epics, because to me, it always felt worth it. The amount of enjoyment, and not only the abundance of enjoyment, but the sheer time spent enjoying always felt like it paid off to me, just like it always pays off for video games, like it pays off for D&D. It's why I buy those things, because I know I'm going to get hours and hours and hours of enjoyment out of them. And at this particular moment in time, at this crux, at this inflection point, it really feels like the danger for the comic book industry, to me as a fan, is not necessarily that there's going to be like less comics, although there might be. It might be that comics stopped being something that I feel like I get enough benefit from for the cost. And that is a scary prospect. So that's my moment of crisis today. I'll put up the Ask Me Anything banner. I'll catch up in your comments. It doesn't seem like I missed too much from your comments. And then we are going to continue on to the books of the week. Always an Instigator, Game Changers Return on Dropout was incredibly unhinged. I am addicted to Dropout. I love Dropout.tv. It's probably, talk about cost benefit, perfect. Actually, might have been the thing that got me started thinking about this topic, because they are raising their subscription by $1 a month. Their subscription now, I think, is going to be like $6.99 or $7.99 American a month. And if you're already subscribed, you won't even get the price change. I could watch Dropout seriously 20 hours in a month, maybe. I usually don't have time to, so usually maybe I just watch the new Game Changer, the new whatever the other kind of game show thing is at that time, whether it's Make Some Noise. They have a new tabletop show that Becca Scott hosts that just played one of my favorite games, Wavelength, that I kickstarted. And then if D20's in season, I'm watching like 2.5 hours out of that a week. Think of the utility that we're getting for $5.99 or $6.99, or you could buy one issue of Batman. Which would you rather have? A month of Dropout TV, which is amazing and hilarious and unhinged and comedy performers at the top of their time or the top of their game, or one issue of Batman. TaylorMade, always a pleasure to, some of these we talked about already. Okay, we ended on Michael Wesley. Crushing Crisis asks Next Imaginaut, who sent me a really he was the other actually inspiration of that Moment of Crisis. He sent me this really thoughtful message about the global supply chain and just thinking about that and how he's sure that I am somebody who thinks about that. And it was just as all this trucking news was coming out, I was looking at my board game shelf and it kind of metastasized into that Moment of Crisis. If I can ask, what is the brand of my weighted blanket? Well, I'm happy to share that with you. I will find it and share it on social. It is a New Zealand only brand, but you could probably look at the specs of it and then find the specs of a similar one. It's the glass weighted bead kind. I think it's like 9.5 kilograms. I helped Max find one that was very, very similar in the Netherlands. Clearly not the same one as New Zealand. So I will look into that and I will post on my Blue Sky. And for you, of course, I can get in touch with you directly. Yalbar saying happy Easter from Madrid, Spain. Happy Easter to you. I didn't know that I had anybody in Spain watching me. Tyler Bear says, what were the terrible comics? What's in the box? Jordan Paul says, when I came back to comics in the 2000s, what was my first new Batman book I really liked? Well, I played catch up on Batman. I think I had only been reading Marvel in 2010, and I was just like starting to like kind of eye DC in 2011, but I still was catching up on so much X-Men, like 15 years of X-Men, that I just didn't even have time in my brain. I think I bought just right away. I think I bought like Arkham Asylum and like New Frontier and Crisis on Infinite Earths, just to have like a couple of DC books on my shelf. But then when New 52 was coming and I started reading about it, I got really intensely interested in this idea of this Grant Morrison person doing Batman, because I had hated Grant Morrison's new X-Men so much. I've softened since then. And I remember I feel like I got some of it digitally, and I don't even remember how I fully read it. Like, I think I got some of it from the library. This was 2011. It was like before digital is much of a thing. But I remember just sitting in my armchair that I missed so much and wish we had brought with us, and just binging all of Grant Morrison's Batman up to New 52, of course, which continued in Batman Incorporated in like 2 days, 4 days, and just being so obsessed and part confused. And then I had to read Final Crisis, which confused me even more because I had not read any DC comic book from like 1995. And so Final Crisis is kind of like advanced DC. And I was like, wow. And so I've always loved Grant Morrison's Batman. And then pretty much all my DCs, and then Batwoman. I'd heard about Batwoman because I think Rachel Maddow had written the introduction to the Batwoman hardcover, Batwoman Elegy, I want to say that it was. So I was like, ooh, a lesbian superhero with a, this liberal media figure who wrote the intro. I will check it out. And then I checked it out. And of course, those Batwoman comics by Greg Rucka are some of the best superhero comics of the past 25 years. So I really love that. So I think I've now fully answered your question. Tyler Bear, Spirit Island is great. My favorite board games are Everdell and Root. I've never played either of those. Root intimidates me because it seems like it's a lot of game and it's expensive. And I do still in my mind do a cost benefit analysis. And plus I have to think my regular gaming crew is me and an 11-year-old. So if the game does not really strip down to 2 players well, and if an 11-year-old, she's a very advanced gamer. I mean, she plays as Spirit Island all by herself. But if it's not going to get to the table a lot with an 11-year-old, I kind of have to do the cost benefit analysis of if it's really worth it. Hello, I am broadcasting to you now from my staircase, which is not a place I can stay. So yeah, Moment of Krisis. No kidding. I am no Jedi. So Reaver X says returning an investment should be driving in every decision. For example, putting a battery in your house gives you this peace of mind from blackouts, despite it takes more than 8 years to get money back. Yeah, but peace of mind does have a cost benefit. Like, peace of mind is worth something, right? The peace of mind of insurance is worth something. So cost benefit doesn't always have to be your physical entertainment for something. It can just be like the peace of mind, happiness, right? Like, what is the
what is the cost benefit analysis of a painting? Beauty has a benefit, right? So it doesn't matter if that beauty was expensive, if you're getting the benefit of beauty and you appreciate that all the time. And you can make that argument for comics too, right? Like comics are an art form and we do benefit from them. And so, so since we benefit from them, they're beautiful, maybe that benefit outstrips their $5.99 cost. And I do think that I do sometimes lose sight of the fact that comics are art, right? And so sometimes like you got to say, well, it's $5.99 because it's art, but the art has to be pretty dang good for that to be the case. So look, we're going to try this one more time. And if it's 40 minutes, which is the latest that we ever start the reviews. So if I cannot get the internet to connect, because I just can't sit on the stairs and do all the reviews. So if the internet connects back in my office and it works, then we'll do reviews. If not, I guess I'm gonna have to put this face back on later this week and give it another try. I know this is non-ideal. So let's give it a try and walk back up there and see if there's internet, which there should be.
Oh wait, it's bouncing back. It's bouncing back. Okay. You know what? We're just going to start doing the books and we're really going to go as fast as we can. And it gets crappy again. The internet gets crappy again. How's that sound? Okay. So I'm probably not going to do a lot of comments because we got to just get through the books. We got to just get through the books. So thank you for everybody who hung around. From the numbers that I can see, it looks like all of one person left through all of that, which really, that's true love. So let me get the books up and we will go. I read 45 comic books this week and I probably going to take a break right before the M's, although who knows if we're going to take a break today with the way things are going. If the internet is holding up, we might just cruise and see if we can like do all comics in 45 minutes. I don't know. We're just going to see what we can do. So let me share my screen again, which I'm sure it just invites more things breaking. Share screen, entire screen. There it is. That one, share. And oh, that's not what we want it to look like. That's not what we want it to look like. We want it to look like that. Okay. Let's go. I did not read and I'll just keep an eye on the chat just so you can tell me if things are really, really going. Oh, we already did that. If things are really, really going haywire in terms of the internet. But I think maybe I fixed it and dropped the timer down to 30 seconds, brain tissue paper. That would be ambitious. Okay. There should be a clear banner. Okay, there we go. All right, I am going to keep an eye on the chat just to see if the internet goes down again, but let's just go for it. So I did not read 2000 AD. It's no longer a treat, although that cover looks really, really cool. I kind of want to see a person in a spacesuit with giant bat wings. It's very tempting. Okay, so now we come to Absolute Flash, issue number 2. I think we all need to be reminded that I hate Jeff Lemire's comic book scripts, and Jeff Lemire, unfortunately, is the writer of this comic. Nick Robles on art and cover, Adriano Lucas, who I love, on colors, and Tom Napolitano on letters. Really cool lettering effects in this. Tom Napolitano really doing a great job. I love the art. I mean, to me, this is just an artwork. Was the beauty worth it? That's the question to be asking about this book, because I just found it to be incredibly compelling. I found the art to be really, really beautiful, but just the art. The story, garbage, hot garbage, because what is the story here? Wally's confused. He was also confused in the past. He's confused in the present, and a bunch of rogues who the whole point of his rogues are that they are the most boring, stupid B-list, C-list, D-list, Silver Age enemies, but we're going to reimagine them for Absolute. Nobody cares, Jeff Lemire. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. So we've got these bad guys that, like, the designs are cool because Nick Robles is talented, but there's nothing happening. I got through 2 issues and nothing happened. Wally West is going, and that's what's happening. So screw this comic. I probably will keep buying it, I guess, because I love Nick Robles and I love talking to you all about comics, but it makes me so angry because it's pointless. What was the point? James Abel says Absolute Flash number 2, the race is on. Who will win? Was there a race? Was there somebody who could have won? I didn't gather that because it was so fucking boring. This issue had a bright colors, but not much happened. Oh, see, there we go. Counseling has been working. I think I might read better in a collected edition. And Cool Angel says, more Colonel West being a jerk, becoming a fan of how Wally's speed is being drawn, but next time, absolutely, yeah, like what is it even about? Who knows? Okay, let's continue. Oh, look, I mean, the art was really cool, and so were the colors, and so were the lettering effects. I wanted to read Arkham Horror because that's another board game I like. I actually played the Eldritch Horror version, but they're related board games. I just didn't have the time, and I was like, issue 4, to get to issue 4 with the amount of time I had this week wasn't going to happen. Here's where I talk about all 3 of Marvel's digital comics all in a really, really short amount of time. So this was Astonishing Avengers, and it did the thing that it did successfully last week, and so I'm continuing to like it, which is that Steve Orlando with artist Francesco Archidiacono and Carlos Lopez and letterer Travis Lanham focused just on 2 characters. So Hercules and this other guy, he's the immortal man, the immortal dude, the immortal guy, but he's from the Great Lakes Avengers, and they go into this giant monolith to kind of investigate what's happening inside. And because Steve Orlando can just focus on what's known in theater as a 2-hander rather than the 4-hander, I don't know why it's not called a 4-hander. It really, really works because it just like gets to focus on these 2, them talking to each other, and in a digital comic with this constrained kind of panel space, it really, really worked. We all know how much I hate this Astonishing Spider-Man comic. I don't know you, I keep talking about it. It flashes back to Peter wondering about being Spider-Man. Then he's like, maybe I'm happy that I'm not Spider-Man because my spider powers got taken away. This must just be for people who care who Scott Ackerman is, because it's so bad that I don't understand who else could be reading it. Astonishing X-Men actually kind of managed to do something this month, and it was written by Alex Packnadal, art by Philip Sevi. I have to give special credit to Philip Sevi, who really does feel like he's getting better and better and better and better with every week of these comics that he draws, which is pretty cool. I didn't just like it because it had Emma in it. I just feel like with Emma there for all of these characters, Banshee, Skin, and Husk, to relate to, it actually just made more sense. That like the way they were acting made more sense because Emma is such a magnetic, attractive character, not only physically, but like as a personality, that it just snapped everybody into focus. But I still think that, and this really proved that it ties in quite specifically to Jed McKay's X-Men. So that seemed like it really worked for me. Okay, I'm going to just adjust some things here since it seems like this is still working. And I'm keeping an eye on your comments live because who knows how life is fleeting. Who knows how long I'm going to last here. So if you give some comments, we're just going to do comments as I go. Georgie Chimchimov says, maybe I should give a verdict at the end of each comment review if the series will be bought post tariffs or not. I at least could say if this was $1 more expensive, would I keep buying it? I mean, that's a thing I absolutely could do. I keep losing my covers. Okay. All right. So this was World's Finest, number 38 by Mark Waid with art from Clayton Henry, colors from Tamara Bonville, and letters by Steve Wands. This was the first of the We Are Yesterday crossover, but even though it's a direct sequential crossover with Justice League Unlimited, it's not really a direct crossover because these things are happening in the past and Justice League Unlimited is happening in the present. That said, I loved this issue, and we know that I don't always love World's Finest. First of all, I don't feel like we're all giving Clayton Henry enough credit. I don't know where he's been or why he's not drawing a regular monthly DC book, but this was absolutely great. I mean, he's different than Dan Mora, and I know people are obsessed with Dan Mora for reasons that are increasingly obscure to me because I just don't think he is truly the best of the best of the best of the best. He's just fine. But this is really, really good, and it sells Clark and Bruce kind of in their boy modes, in their non-superhero modes, with Green Lantern doing a test flight, but then the test flight crashes, and then they have to go in and take a look at where it crashed, and it turns out to be in Gorilla City, so then they have to flash. It's just gorgeous. It looks so good. It sells that vibe. It places itself very specifically in the early part of the Silver Age for DC, shortly after the Justice League was formed, and it just was really a fun read. Now, how this is going to be reflected in the modern day of Justice League Unlimited next week when we get to that half of it, I don't know. But this was the thing that I actually like about World's Finest. I like when it feels like it gives us a substantial glimpse into a moment that if the DC Silver Age was thinking more about longevity the way the Marvel Silver Age was, that we would have had these moments. Like, this is like, wow, the first time Flash met up with the Justice League in Gorilla City, one of the first time Superman faces off against Grodd. Like, to me, that felt substantial and entertaining. Yeah. So, I am keeping an eye on the chat. James Abel says, Batman Superman World's Finest 38, new crossover, all kneel before Gorilla Grodd. Monkeys see, monkeys do. The ending was interesting. Okay, so would I keep buying this if it got more expensive? For now, but it's not high among my favorite series. This is Budding Krisis, and of course, I'll read anything with Krisis in the title. This is a Comixology original, and it's kind of like a storybook sort of thing about this city. We've talked about it before, where there are these wish pods that grow or used to grow on trees, literally, that can kind of grant any wish, but there's no more of them. So the magic is what we've got right now. And so this just follows one character that we've met previously. This is written by M.K. Reed, art, letters, and designed by Jonathan Hill, colors from Ali Drake, and it follows this one character who wants to turn his friend that got turned into a snake back from a snake. And he's met this local person, and the person's like, we just have healing pools. There's free healthcare in this fantasy kingdom. You just go to the healing pool and you get healed. And I was a little bit not in love with this art to begin with, because I don't always love these like really plain round like indie faces with the little squares for noses and rectangles. I don't always love it, but something about it really, really worked for me in this issue. I think because the colors that Ali Drake are doing are they're so vivid and bold, it kind of made me not just stare at the faces and care about the environments a little bit more. So he takes his snake friend to this healer, and it's this really interesting conversation about like, you can only be healed if you want to be healed. So like, yeah, technically our healing pools could change your snake friend if we manage to get, if a snake can hear us and if a snake can understand, do you want to be a person again? But the snake's got to choose. So it's like all about consent, but also all about like free healthcare, and also about like the ethics of accessing healthcare for free. And it was fascinating. And the thing that's fascinating, it didn't feel preachy at all. Like MK Reed, it felt like real characters having a real conversation. I just found myself like getting lost in this conversation about the ethics of if you could turn a snake back into a person. Snake, anytime a person becomes a snake, I think of the G.I. Joe movie from 1987. I was once a man, right? So then I guess, I don't know if I want to spoil the best part. I guess I'm going to spoil it a little bit. It turns out that this main character is queer. I won't specify how. And I don't think we knew that already. So I was like, what? And then that adds another dimension to the whole consent and ethics of medical care. And I'm not going to get into all of it, but it really took me by surprise. And I liked it because I didn't feel like sometimes, I mean, speaking as somebody who likes to read queer comics, sometimes when you're reading queer comics, it really feels like they're like, this is a queer comic. You are reading queer stuff. And I'm like, that's cool. But sometimes I just want to read a comic about people, and then it turns out that people happen to be queer. And that's what happened here. And I just really loved it. In retrospect, I know it's a little bit rough on maybe issue 3, but I think it made me love like all of the past issues of this even more somehow. So then was Buried long ago. There's a no indie comic, and all of the credits are in cursive. That's just cruel. How am I supposed to read that? Anthony Cleveland, Alex Cormack, and Justin Birch on letters. This was interesting. It started with a fairy tale about this ogress who basically lures people into her murder tree and kills them in the murder tree. And so I thought it was going to be a fantasy series, but then it turns out we're just reading a book. And it's just these kids in the modern day who have like this very evil kind of Black Widow, not in the spy sense, but in the kills its mate sense, mother who has maybe like found a profitable situation for them to be in and grow up in. And she's of course going to do her Black Widow thing again. And you're kind of led to believe by the whole comic that she's maybe a supernatural element in the comic. And maybe she is, but it also feels like there's then at the end another supernatural element. I did really like the art. Alex Cormack's figures and faces can be a little bit vague at points, but I like how the color was kind of just dapples of color from Justin Birch. There was a little bit of a watercolor quality, and I like this because I hate the mom, but I think we're supposed to because the kids don't like her either. But it leaves us with this big question, like, is the supernatural thing connected to the mom? Is it following the mom? Is it inspiring or forcing the mom to do what she does? Are they just separate? Is it attracted to the mom? I like that. I think in issue number 1 has to establish things, it has to establish the world, and it has to ask questions. And I feel like it really made me ask a question. And so I really am entertained by the idea of reading it. James says, Buried long ago, number 1, based on the true story of Belle Guinness during 1901 to 1908. I will say they didn't do a good job at explaining where the children came from. Did they not come from how babies are made? I don't know. I guess you're implying maybe they're not her children. I don't know. Okay, so let's continue. I left this to so late in my read because I just don't care, but I had a little bit of time this morning, so I wound up reading it. Times Foot Soldier, Cable, Levenchrome, number 4. Here's the thing. This tries to do a Groundhog's Day thing where Cable keeps reliving the same challenge over and over of trying to save this woman that he fell in love with an issue ago. And the thing is, it's one of these things that this author is so bad at doing because he's such a bad author that he just kind of tells us, he shows us and he tells us, but he tells us by saying, this is the thing that's happening. And he doesn't, and the showing isn't compelling. So he's told us Cable's in love with this woman, but like, okay, fine, I guess let's accelerate that to 3 issue. He's telling us Cable's got to go through time and fix this thing, but it's actually not that interesting to read. And so what you get is basically, and this is something a few Marvel authors are having problems with right now, which makes me think it's an editorial problem, is that you're getting this comic that's basically just saying, I'm a comic about going back in time to try to stop somebody from dying. And then the actual story is not interesting at all. I've already said I think Mike Henderson is just in the wrong genre doing this sci-fi stuff. I don't think he really is capable of likeness. But I just got to the end of it and it wasn't bad. Like past issues of this have been bad. This wasn't bad, but I got to the end and I was just like, who's approving the script? Like who's making this for $5? I don't know if I'd want to read this for $1. Like it's just not about anything. I guess on some semblance of a sense of somewhere, it's about Cable finding connection with somebody but also the fact that the way he's been abused by time and the way time abuses him has made it so that sullies or breaks or renders useless even when he does make human connection. But I am reaching real damn far to tell you interesting things about a comic book that is just fundamentally not that interesting. So I just don't know. I mean, I'm happy if you're enjoying it. I can't imagine how that is, but good for you. This is Cat and Mouse, which is coming back. It's like an old indie property, but I could not find it digitally. I would have read it, as I will read everything, but I could not find where it exists digitally. This is Catwoman 75 by Tarun Grumbach, Patricio Del Pesce on art, Steve Wands on letters. This was so extraordinarily bad. There might have to be, I have to just work out my emotions about it as we talk. So we're in the deep past. We're in the deep cover that Catwoman is in, maybe before she was Catwoman, running a scheme, running a scam. This is like her Ocean's 11. They're breaking into places, security cameras, whatever. Why do I care? Why do I care? Why the do I care? Why should I care? It has nothing to do with Catwoman. I didn't need this. Like I was saying last issue, maybe we needed to know more about why she cared about this crew. Now that we saw this, I don't care because they're all pointless characters that are completely shallow. They're like, ooh, sexy. Let's joke about things being sexy. Things are sexy. That's all that's happening here. And it just feels like one of those comics where it's trying to push the style of the story over the substance of the story. So it turns out that heist goes bad. And did we need 30 pages? I just felt like so much of my time was wasted. I was getting like angrier and angrier as I kept reading it because I was like, why are we here? Why are we here? What is interesting about this story that makes it worth telling that we couldn't have just told in a panel? Chris Claremont would have done this in one caption box. Catwoman, the voice for her started so strong when this run began by Tarun Grumbach, but we've lost any semblance of who Selina is, and we're just like following the story that could be any random indie crime comic. It's not even a Catwoman comic anymore, so I just don't understand. James Abel says, Catwoman 75, it was fun. Art was very good. The art was good. I don't see the reason behind it. Okay, see, we're couples therapy has been working for James and I. Do we really need to see Selina younger days? I do trust Corin Groback, but I'm not sure about it. Well, I really enjoy her as a person, but I don't know if I would say I trust her anymore. This is Challengers of the Unknown. And I thought this series was supposed to go to 6 issues, but it only went to 5. Which is fine. I will point out once again that this has a recap page that's not actually a recap. It actually drives the plot and like advances the plot based on what happened between issues, which I think is so clever. It's written by Christopher Cantwell, art by Sean Isaacs and M.K. Nelpon, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., and letters by Hassan Otsman Elhal. This was really cool. I will say this. It kind of ends abruptly, and I don't think it gives us like a real answer to the mystery of what was going on with the Challengers. Basically, the Challengers all are people who have had a brush with death in the past, and so this is saying, well, what if their brush with death has connected them to this Omega energy from Darkseid, and maybe that's why every one of them is having a new brush with death and harboring this energy, and so the Justice League has to figure it out, and the one of them has not been invested with this energy yet, so he's the one that Wonder Woman centers on of like, we can solve this mystery. It gets big. It looks so cool. I mean, Sean Isaacs always delivers on art. It has a really cool fight. It has a really ambiguous ending that maybe ties into the Absolute Universe. It does seem like they're starting to build throughout this all in that like eventually the Absolute Universe is going to bleed into this main universe or come into conflict with this main universe, which is very exciting. But then it kind of just ends, and it ends on this really ambiguous note, which I think I have a guess on what is meant to be implied by the ending, but I just don't know. It does feel like this got a little truncated, but I think this is a fun little series. I think the problem is for anybody who's going to go back and read it, it's not going to feel like it tells a whole story. It's only going to make sense when we have the whole everything of DC all in. And it's like, oh, the Challengers was this one little puzzle piece of it. You'll have to go back and read Challengers 1 through 5 to get that. So it makes me think that much like the Atom Project, maybe this should have been called Justice League: the Challengers of the Unknown, or Justice League versus the Challengers of the Unknown, or something, so that it was obvious that it's kind of a sub run of this Justice League run, because this is very much a Justice League book. There's always a leaguer in every issue. The League is hovering at the edges of the story. That what happens here is affecting the League in the same way the Question all along the Watchtower does, in the same way the Atom Project does. So I am net positive on this. I actually really enjoyed every issue. I just think this is one of those things that me as a person who makes comics guides, thinking about going back and making the guide to explain like how all this stuff fits together is terrifying to me. I'm like, how would I do that? I would have to do so much research. None of the books really hint to each other where they're placed or how they go together. So that bugs me, but it was enjoyable. I liked it a surprising amount. Okay, now we move on to Conan the Barbarian. So this was one that really made me say, what are we doing here? It is. So here's the thing. Jim Zub, he writes the most amazing captions for Conan. Like every caption, I'm just lingering on every word. It's lettered absolutely beautifully, clearly, and easy to read by Richard Starkings and Tyler Smith. I love the letters, especially because I did not like the letters in Conan at Marvel. It's just such a joy to read. And doesn't just come with the writing, it comes with the lettering. And I really, I just have to call out how much I love the letters on this book. And Doug Braithwaite on art with Diego Rodriguez coloring him is going to be wonderful. But here's the thing. Zub, I like when Conan gets involved in supernatural things, and Zub has really leaned into that. I would say there's only been 3 or 4 kind of stories across these 20 issues so far. And so and I would say that they almost all of them, except for the first one, have some supernatural element, and I like that. But the thing is, Zub doesn't seem to want to make the supernatural element super literal. Like, he doesn't want to have Conan like fighting a giant snake. So this is a vision of a giant snake that may or may not be possessing his soul. And because that's the way that each story has trended, it's starting to feel like nothing's actually happening and like Conan is only fighting his visions. The writing is amazing. These issues are substantial. It takes me never less than 10 minutes to read an issue of Conan, sometimes much more, because there's just so much. There's so much in the writing. There's so much in the art. So I do think this is high value for dollar. I just feel like we're a little bit in a rut, and it just feels like I can't tell the difference between this story where he's maybe got a snake god in him versus the last story where he was time traveling. It's starting to feel like they're all bleeding together a little bit, but the quality is really, really high. I think this probably reads better collected and in a binge, because in a binge you can kind of see the stories like rolling into one another. To me, reading it monthly, it's just kind of, I'm getting like a little bit of a Groundhog's Day thing of like, didn't I just read this? Did I read this? I think I just read this. But it's beautifully made. This cover goes so damn hard. Daredevil Unleashed Hell. I think it's the Red Band series. I think there's only one more issue, and so hopefully when it comes out in trade, the trade will be available digitally, because it is mature readers. They are not releasing it digitally right now, and also to give people a reason to go into comic book shops. That's just such a good cover. Like it reminds me of like a 90s cover, but it's so much like tighter and more rendered than a 90s cover would be. It's just so damn cool. So damn cool. Sonic the Hedgehog X DC. How are you supposed to say? What did the youth saying when you see an X? Is it times versus? Because if it was plus, I would think like together, right? And I would say and DC and Sonic the Hedgehog. What does the X mean? What does the X mean? 10, according to Powers of X and House of X. So I guess it is DC 10 Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't know. But how is this so good? I'm not even a Sonic the Hedgehog game player. So maybe, you know what? Maybe Ian Flynn is getting every Sonic character wrong. But I don't think so, because he's like one of the regular Sonic writers. This, I cannot describe to you how delightful this was to read, which I know is my job, so I'm failing. Flash and Sonic are like trying to be do-gooder heroes, and they're running away from Darkseid's eye beams, and they're like, I'm faster. No, I'm faster. And they've got this like sibling rivalry thing that is so cute. Like, of course, Flash immediately would just be like, I'm going to just be siblings with this hedgehog because we're so fast. Then all of the Justice League have to split up and deal with things. And I wish that we had like 4 more pages in this issue so we could have lingered on their missions, because we just didn't get to spend as much time with some of them as others. And each of the team ups with the Sonic family are so good. Look at Wonder Woman in this little pink car just chilling as her little Sonic person drives her. That's like my favorite panel I've seen in a comic book so far in 2025. And then the ending is shocking. It is like shocking. I couldn't believe that it went there. And in a way, it kind of feels like this could be a part of the DC All-In, which I know it's not. But the way that it ends and the way that it wraps up feels so connected to what happened in Challengers that it was like a total like mind blown. Like, whoa. I just think this is using, for a comic that is like a toyetic mash up the stuff comic, it's using all of the parts so well. It's exactly what you would want from a comic like this. It feels like if it was allowed to be in continuity in these universes, it would be incredibly important, but it still has that heft all on its own. It's drawn beautifully from Adam Bryce Thomas. Matt Herm's colors are just so awesome and vivid. They feel like they really, really pop, and it unites the video game world and the comic book world. Very clearly lettered by one of my favorites, Becca Carey. I just love it. I don't know why it's 13 plus. Like, to me, it's not super violent. I would give this to an 8-year-old. I guess they just have to for like liability reasons at this point. Say it's 18 plus. I would think a Sonic the Hedgehog comic you would want to be all ages, and there's nothing about it that's not all ages. James Abel said, DC X Sonic Hedgehog, the balance of humor and action was done excellent. And that one panel with Wonder Woman, the pink car was so adorable. See, it's not just me. Everybody all across the internet thought that was the best one. Max just says, Sonic DC. Yeah, it was amazing. If you have even the littlest bit of love in your heart for Sonic the Hedgehog, I have to recommend that you go out and check out this comic. I'm trying to like balance where the comics commence. Comic strength come up on the screen because I want this to be big enough that you can like see it. It's kind of cool, I guess, if like that overlaps that a little bit. And then we'll put the timer down here. We're trying new things today. We're trying new things because you know what? Life is fleeting. You only have the time that you have, so we're just trying new things, which is we're just going to do the comments as we go. I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep that up, but we're going to try. So this was Detective Comics by Tom Taylor and Mikhail Janin, inked by Norm Rapund, and it is 1096, which is the end of the first arc of Tom Taylor. I was really nervous here that Tom Taylor was just not going to get through enough in this first arc, and it was going to be one of these first arcs that's like a 40 issue first, or like it just feels like a lot of these people are having a lot of trouble doing arcs. Like Batman and Robin from Philip Kennedy Johnson right now is like, oh my god, a re-on like issue 75. It just feels like it's going on forever. But no, Taylor really wraps it up. It's gorgeous. I love it. It had a twist. It seemed so obvious all along, at least to me. Pour moi. It seemed really obvious what was going to be happening with this bad guy and stuff. And then this actually had a twist there. But I will say it didn't feel like any of the characters had a lot of agency. It was like a building was burning, but then Batman has to go back into the burning building. And then the Bat family goes and invades this prison, and they're going to win because they're going to win. It just really didn't feel like there were any pivotal moments where anything could change. It didn't feel like there were a lot of decisions, but I understand, like, we just had to get through this material, and I would have probably been annoyed if it went to another issue. I just wish there had been some question of risk at some point, especially for the Bat family, who kind of just looks gorgeous taking up panel space, but ultimately just it really didn't feel like there was any point to their story. Like, we could have just heard it all reported by Batgirl over a radio, but of course the panels were fun. So I kind of got a little bit softer on this week, and that's why it dropped out of my top 12. I still love this comic. I still think it's gorgeous. I love the direction Tom Taylor's going in. I think a lot of people say so-and-so writes a lot about fathers and sons. Philip K. Johnson writes a lot about fathers and sons. Jeff Lemire writes a lot about fathers and sons. And the things they write about fathers and sons are friggin' boring garbage that anybody could surmise with 2 seconds on their hand. To me, for me, this issue and this arc from Tom Taylor had such a more interesting thing to say about mothers and sons that felt unique and different from anything we get in anything else, especially as we get later in this week's comic and we get to Wolverine, which you're going to hear me really have some opinions about. This is doing well, and had an inkling of a fleeting moment that was similar to the reveal in Wolverine that was so dumb, but I'm not going to scream about Wolverine. Now we have a lot of alphabet between here and there, but here it felt earned, and then it didn't lean on that moment. It just kept going. So I guess the more I'm talking about it, maybe I did really like it. It just, again, the Bat family stuff just felt like it went by in kind of a flash. John Paul says Detective Comics jumped on this issue. Wow. Well, you should definitely catch up from this arc, because this is probably the weakest one of this arc, and it was still pretty good. And liked it. Oh, it says the internet's being bad again. Does the internet look bad again? No. And liked it very much. Loved the pace. Jan is great on art and colors. It felt in line with Rucka and all. It does. I don't know. Let me try some things, and then we'll just see what happens. Am I still on? If this is still working, then we had an Easter miracle, because it means my wired connection. Yes. Okay. So the wired connection is working, which is the reliable connection. Lance Minier, you didn't miss much. You just missed everything in my life falling apart. No, it says the connection's bad again. All right. Well, it is what it is. All right. So Dick Tracy, I didn't read. I did read it last month, and I thought that it was like decent last month. So I was like, ooh, maybe we'll keep reading Dick Tracy. But then when I saw the cover again this month, I was just like, who cares? Life goes on, and I don't have to keep living it with Dick Tracy, because I've just hated it too much. So in the equation of tariffs, this one's already too expensive for me to care about. And then Died Hard, didn't we talk about this last week? I guess they like held it back a week so it'd be closer to Easter. I feel like we just talked about how this is a Keen Spot comic and what is Exceptional X-Men. So I just think it's too soon. It's too soon to do anything useful with Mr. Sinister right after Krakoa, but let's just take that away, right? Let's just say you didn't read Krakoa, you skipped it. You're one of those losers who didn't like Krakoa. And so you're just reading this and you're like, oh, I like Mr. Sinister. So here's the thing. A couple of Moments of Krisis ago, we talked about how space connotes importance in a comic book. And the more space you give to something in a comic book, the more important it is. I'll give you one big splash page of Mr. Sinister. We've earned that. Mr. Sinister is a big reveal, but this comic just does not use its panel space well. And that's not just down to Carmen Carnero on art. That's the way that Eve Ewing is scripting it. She's scripting that this is just a single page of Mr. Sinister. And I just don't think it is giving us the time we need in the story, and it's pausing on moments that are not actually that important. So even though I like the script and I think she wrote Mr. Sinister well, the art is, I mean, this could have been a cover. It's just so remarkably gorgeous. It's so beautiful. Carnero, I was a little bit worried a couple of months ago that she was being a little bit rushed and we weren't getting like the painterly quality of her line work that makes me think of Gene Colan so much. I feel like it was back here and we've really gotten a beautiful symbiotic relationship between her line art and Nolan Woodard on colors. It's just so gorgeous. Like, it's hard to tell sometimes where her shading with lines stops and his shading with colors starts. So I love all the art that she is drawing, but I just don't think the panel time is being used efficiently. And that's actually a Eve Ewing problem because she's the writer. She's setting the pace. So I think that this was a fine read. I think Sinister was voiced fine. I don't understand why everybody had to be singing Dazzler songs. As a huge Dazzler fan, I just don't understand because it wasn't that funny and the songs are always like made up and bad. What they need to do is they need to get a real songwriter who writes real songs into Marvel to like write a whole album of Dazzler lyrics that they can just have. And then that way, when people sing Dazzler songs, they will be referencing songs that are established and are good, you know, like, but so I don't even know what I can say about this. Like, it wasn't that satisfying. The art was really great. The story moved, but I just think we're spending time on the wrong things. And with a book that's not double shipping, if this was double shipping, then Carmen Carnero wouldn't be able to draw all of it. But if it was double shipping, then maybe it could keep, you know, then I'd be like, okay, well, it's worth it to have these slower moments because at least we are, at least we're getting story really fast. But it doesn't even really feel like that's what's happening. So I just don't really understand what we're doing here. Exceptional X-Men, still my favorite book of the line, question mark. I don't mind Ewing Sinister, but still the kids are the highlight. Yeah, these are the best kids of all the new characters in the line. I like these the best. Very excited about the next issue, more action-packed. It seemed, yeah, it just didn't really, there was this kind of like mistaken identity thing here, and then that was really all that really happened here. And by the way, hello to One Wheelchair X. Okay, I like Popeye. I'm so desperate to read. It's like Popeye as a manga. Every time I see screenshots online of people with their physical issues, it looks so good, but it's just not available digitally. I think it started out digital, and then they actually got the license to actually be official and print it. So, and then they took all the digital copies down. So I'm not going to get to read it until it's in trade, but everybody makes it seem so good. I did read Flash Gordon. This was like so high on my list at the beginning of this year. And I think it's really one of my big themes this week. And that I almost, hold on. We got to pause. One Wheelchair X says the Dazzler song they were singing was one of the songs created for the Dazzler Mini. But the thing was, all the songs created for the Dazzler Mini were garbage because Jason Liu shouldn't be allowed to write things that rhyme because they were so offensive to me as a songwriter of 25 years that I more than 25 years, almost 30 at this point, that I was incensed. I was flames on the side of my face. So I'm saying they need to do that, but with somebody who can write songs. Okay. Back to Flash Gordon. Here's the thing. And this almost was my moment of crisis today. The idea of like, how can I say it? That there's such a direct relationship between the art and the writing. And sometimes when the art and the writing and the colors and the letters all line up perfectly, it just creates this comic book that's so much more than the sum of its parts. And I now looking back at the early issues of this, I'm wondering, was the script that good? Because it's all been written by Jeremy Adams. It was being drawn by Will Conrad, who's one of my favorite artists, who's still the artist of the cover. I just love how Will Conrad plays with shadows, the shadows on Flash Gordon's arm there, the black on the ground. He just uses blacks in such an interesting way. And I just linger, I hang. But this is by Tom Derenick, who's fine. And it's colored by the same colorist, Lee Luffridge. But this issue just didn't really take me anywhere. Like, Flash Gordon hooks up with some of his old allies and he's trying to find his place in this new universe and he's kind of doesn't know how things are going. And so they're like, oh, we can get you in to talk with your old lover who's like the queen of everything right now, but maybe she's being kept and maybe she's in trouble, which is interesting. And I think not every issue needs to be slam bang action. The unfortunate thing is that the times in this issue where they did do some action, it just felt really repetitive. It was the same action beat all, which was people running towards him and him being like, no, with the sword. And they did it 3 times. So, and I just don't, maybe that's actually not a script problem. Maybe that's an artist problem. Maybe Tom Darnick just could not think of interesting enough ways to panel that action, or maybe it was a script problem and Jeremy Adams just wrote that action. My point being that the symbiosis between the creative team was so much stronger for me when Will Conrad was on it on the first 5 issues. And I was so excited. Like every month I was like, yeah, Flash Gordon, which like, why would I say that sentence? I don't have any nostalgia for Flash Gordon really, but now it's just turning into another indie comic book and it's still very well made, but I just, without that nostalgia factor, I just don't know how hooked I am anymore. Okay. Hello, cool buddy. Hello to you. Your name starts with K2. See, we have things in common. Okay. This is Gville. And I didn't read it, but it actually looks really charming and it says free. You're welcome. So it must be online somewhere free, like on this guy's website. So I guess I'm going to, I like when indie cartoonists that would just be doing like original graphic novels for kids, which I assume this person does because it says the best-selling cartoonist of Amelia Rules, Jimmy Gownley. So I like when those are single comics. I think it's fun. I think it's just a nice treat to like read like plain fun comics about people being people that like could be read by anybody of any age, and they come out monthly digitally instead of in, you know, in just in graphic novels. So I will try to seek out this Gville for next month. I just think I noticed it too late and I didn't know what does the G stand for. Gooberville, Gayville, Giantville. It could be anything. I don't know. So let's continue here to Gotcha Man, which I don't read and I have no nostalgia for, but the covers sure are great. And then G.I. Joe, which I have a lot of nostalgia for. A real American hero. G.I. Joe is there. Okay. So this is part of the Silent Mission series. They're in the Real American Hero universe. These are not in the Energon universe. You're not missing anything if you've been reading Energon. And this is Spirit, who is G.I. Joe, who's like a park ranger, who I never had the toy of because he was like a kind of early toy. And then I never made it to him as a toy. And this is Leonardo Romero, who we very frequently see drawing with Kelly Thompson. He's an artist that's often paired with her, but he scripted it and drew it. This was pretty remarkable. It was pretty great because Romero creates a script for himself that does not need words. Part of that is having really clear action and him being a stunning artist. He's coloring him. Or no, Chris Peter is coloring here. It's the colorist from FML. So he's a stunning artist, but also he knows how to work around words by using the panels and good panel setups to communicate motion, right? So he does more gridding on pages that has more movement so we can follow the movement. And he uses a lot of symbols. Like we see the Cobra symbol on a tank. We see scribbles on a whiteboard. Using symbols and using kind of diegetic writing that exists in the universe that Spirit is experiencing, helps the silent issue communicate silently. There were just a couple of moments of discontinuity of action where I wish it had stopped to be a little clearer. And in the end, I did wind up a little bit confused about what happened, but that's fine. I don't think a silent issue has to completely explain everything. The point is that you should be able to follow the action and infer things and be interested in things about it, despite the fact that it was silent. And here it really, really worked. It literally, I got done this and I like went and got my giant G.I. Joe giant omnibus thing off the shelf. And I was like, what did Spirit's figure look like? What year did he come out that I didn't have him? I wish I had Spirit. He could have been so cool. He could have been in the forest with the animals. Like it made me want to play with toys, which I think is the perfect reaction to elicit from an issue like this. And I think Leonardo Romero did a fantastic job, colored by Chris Peter. I really, really loved it. You know, I hate a lot of comic books, as we've discovered. And often when I'm hating a comic book, I'm kind of just groaning or like gritting my teeth. And then I'm bored by a lot of comic books too. And I want to wander away. When I tell you this, talk about why I was late for the show and late in my reading, it probably took me like 3 hours to read this 30-ish page comic book because I kept wandering away. I went to get chocolate. I decided to make some lunch. Then I took a little nap on the couch. I would do anything to get away from reading this comic book. It made me want to die, but also break things, but also go back in time like Cable and erase Godzilla from the timeline and possibly erase myself from the timeline so I would never have to experience this comic book, which I had so much anger about, except I do like Giuseppe Camuncoli's art. And it was really, really good here. Colored by Federico Blee, although awfully blue Federico Blee, but Godzilla breathes blue fire, so it's motivated blue lighting. But the story, here's the thing. I don't really know 70s Hulk that well, so this was a story set in the 70s of Hulk. I couldn't tell you if it worked in Hulk continuity or not. It seemed like probably not based on what was happening, but I don't know. And then I don't really know anything about Godzilla. I got on chat with my friend Felix in Australia, who does know a little bit about Godzilla, and I was like, is it normal for Godzilla to rip somebody's arm off and then beat them with their own arm? Because that just seems like it doesn't seem like what anything a modern Godzilla would do, because I've only seen like modern Godzilla. And he's like, oh yeah, in the man in the suit era in the 60s and 70s, Godzilla was very much more played as like having arms to just like do things. I just don't know. Maybe I'm just the wrong person. I just don't like kaiju stuff, and I'm not the hugest Hulk fan, and I don't like out of continuity. So, and I don't like giant robot stuff either. So I just think this had so many strikes against it, and I think because the Fantastic Four issue that came first with Godzilla fit so squarely into Fantastic Four continuity and like played in such a pleasing way with continuity, that because this one just felt like such a weird alien landscape that didn't connect to that, and didn't really feel like it connected to a Hulk comic that I knew or understood. I just hated it so much, and I just found it so boring, and that's all I can say. Max said, yeah, boys, smash them up. So I guess if you're just looking for Godzilla to smash, maybe it went great for you. Grim Fairy Tales. I'm always on my Grim Fairy Tales bullshit. This cover, amazing cover. But here's the thing. I actually like this. It was a 3-part story, and it's a pretty good story. Like one of their friends, they lost a friend. They go to California to find her. They find out that this vampire queen has taken her and that she's amassing an army of vampires. And this thing that it does this thing that I wish that it always does, but it actually like refers to the characters by name, because usually you only ever know who Skye Mathers, the main character, is. And then if there's a big guest star like Liesel Van Helsing, we know who she is. But then there's all these side characters, and they never name them. They never say what their powers are. They're just like standing around, and you're like, who are these ladies? But here it actually like gave us context, and they showed, and I think part of what's missing for me that I realized what this issue gave me is there's sometimes missing care for each other, like because they never speak to each other by name or like talk about what each other is capable of, or why they like or care about each other. It often just makes me feel very estranged from the supporting characters in this book. But in this issue, it didn't. And also this page is so good. Like I just love the face of like the evil vampire queen down at the bottom there is like so cool and dimensional and colored really well. But when the faces get smaller, even at the top of the page, I just feel like the colors go so gray and muddy. And I've seen this art team do better. It just feels like, and it's not just because this was in darkness in a cave, it just feels like they've really been struggling to color when we have to zoom out and have the characters be a little bit smaller, and then they like really deliver remarkable stuff when we get to zoom in and have them be bigger. And it kind of just took me out of it repeatedly, because it just kept looking so like gray and faded to me on the pages. But it was a really good story, and I do think that this was like a fun 3 issues to jump in on Grim Fairy Tales, and I just love Grim Fairy Tales in general. Okay, Always an Skater says, the only kaiju stuff I've enjoyed is really from Guillermo del Toro. This is the final issue of Hack Slash versus or equals or with or spending time with Body Bags, which is a indie comics property by the deceased Jason Pearson, and this mashes them up together. This worked really well for me, and I think I know exactly why. First of all, Stefano Caselli's art here with Steve Kurth on finishes or inks or something, colored by Kurt Michael Russell. This might be the best I've ever seen Caselli's art look, which is crazy because he does amazing artwork at Marvel. He's drawing Black Panther, Ultimate Black Panther, like month in and month out right now. Where did he find the time to do these 4 issues too and make it look this gorgeous? I have no idea. Maybe it's just the combination of him and Steve Kurth, but like just the detail, the action. I've said this before reading this book, I just didn't know that Caselli had game like this that could be this weird and have characters of different sizes and with crazy expressions like this. I just didn't know. Also, the colors are so good. And the thing I think I liked about this is it got us out of this high school. I think Tim Seeley was very deliberately just doing this very like, this is an assassin high school tropey thing where everybody's so snarky and they were in a murder movie and they were all going to die and it was the final girl thing. But it just wasn't that interesting. And I know that's part of the DNA of Hack Slash. Like Hack Slash is about every single murder movie trope that exists and that is out there. So I get that it's part of that world. And so that's part of one of the things he's doing is playing with tropes. But to me, it just felt so much more pure that we were to like the physical action of hacking and slashing here. And we were down to just two older characters and two younger characters arguing with each other and then also having a villain. And it actually just made me really love the series, even though the middle of the series was not that very high quality, and makes me very, very excited for what I will eventually do my full hack and slash read. We're getting closer and closer because I'm actually almost done the guide. So I think when I'm done the guide, then I'll be reading it. Hank asks, Caselli is drawing this? Had no idea. I'm going to have to pick it up. Well, it's weird. It's not the best series you've ever read, but the art is remarkable. And Caselli, of course, is the co-creator of Hack and Slash. He did the original Hack and Slash with Tim Seeley, but he does not always draw it because he's got big Marvel gigs. I do not read The Hexiles from Colin Bunn about a bunch of estranged stepchildren, or not stepchildren, half siblings of a magician who died, and then they inherit his power, but also inherit his problems. I just didn't think issue number 1 was that good. I am not reading The Hive from Image Comics. I just thought the issue number 1 was tragically unorganized, and it could not get me interested. And also, I don't make it out that I hate Mike Henderson. I enjoy Mike Henderson sometimes, but I didn't, and I did like his art on this, but the story was just, didn't feel like it really was going anywhere. Apparently, Cool Angel read Hexiles and says, you're trying to game the system. The gang use a cheat code, poor Madison, to power up and defeat Athalia. They get a temporary reprieve on their souls, but do they get another limited series? Well, did you like it? I mean, that was a good summary. Good summary. But was it good? Was it compelling? If it was $1 more expensive, would you keep buying it? While you think about that, let's talk about Iron Man. The Insurgent Iron Man, although the title is just Iron Man. And this is by Spencer Ackerman and Julius Ota, with Alex Sinclair on colors and Joe Caramagna on letters. Where to begin? So the thing about this comic is, I'm getting the feeling that Spencer Ackerman really likes everything about Iron Man other than I left the comment up, other than the superhero stuff. And so this has a really interesting plot about kind of geopolitics, about what happens. Can you basically supply two sides of a conflict? Can Stark supply the people who are insurgent and want to take out Doom, but only supply them enough so they feel like there's a chance to keep nipping at his heels, but not feel like we've got to go now. This is the most we're ever going to get. Like, if he keeps holding out the carrot of there's going to be more weapons, there's going to be more armor, will they keep waiting? And at the same time, can he basically have a face off with Doom? And there's this really interesting conversation here with Victorious, or whatever her name is, that he's like, if Doom takes Stark Unlimited from me, and he's like, I didn't like the capitalism that Stark was doing, so I'm de-oligarching him. What are all the other oligarchs going to say? Which is such a prescient of the time political commentary about, like, the oligarchs are keeping the politics of the world in balance, and there is a relationship between the oligarchs and the people in power, especially dictatorial authoritarian people in power, and neither one can upset each other's basket that much. And so if you like all that, and you like this artwork by Julius Ota, which I very much do, although I don't always love Alex Sinclair's colors, then you might really like this book. The thing is, I didn't feel like the action was particularly motivated. It just felt like it was there so we could get this speech about the balance of geopolitical power. And, like, especially here, like, this one guy flew in the sky, so she threw him down, and Iron Man also zaps him with his sword, and he's like, catch this guy falling from 60 feet. And so then Melinda May catches him, but it just was really hard to track. I just felt myself going back again and again, not because the action didn't track from panel to panel, but it just felt like the story of the action didn't make sense. Later in the issue, I didn't get it. She, like, explodes with power, but it's written so confusingly. I thought she had actually fallen off of something. I thought she fell down. And I was like, was there an explosion? Did a bomb go off? How did all that happen? And I kept reading the page over and over again. And I eventually realized that it was her exploding with power. So maybe that's a Julius Ota problem. Maybe that's a script problem. There's some kind of problem in the works here. I do like the more geopolitical lean of this. I think last issue was extraordinarily good. It's catching my interest a little bit more than the business talk stuff of the first arc, which I just found dreadfully boring. And I do like that it's doing one-off stories in each issue, which is my big kink right now. I just don't know if Spencer Ackerman has an interesting enough idea for this as a comic book. It just feels like he's got right now like a 200 level college lecture, and that Iron Man happens to be in that. It's Jeff, da 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 da. He needs a theme song. Maybe Max will write it. This is it, Jeff. We don't need a minute. Jeff finds that he has won the lottery, and so he goes to redeem his lottery ticket. And what do you think Jeff would buy if he won the lottery? Well, this comic answers it. The thing was, there was really no punchline. It was just super, 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 super adorable. And that's enough, because the cost of this is a big old free if you've already subscribed to Marvel Unlimited. Going back to Iron Man, Max Appelman says, this was so boring, I think I started hallucinating because my mind was trying to escape the experience of reading this book as I was going through it. That is exactly how I felt reading that Godzilla comic book. So the reason I don't usually do comments as we go is because A, I only have so much attention span, although we know actually from near mint condition, I have a lot of attention span. But B, I don't want to say a comment of a book like when I'm the next book down, because if I do the chapter marks, now somebody's at the hello, person who's viewing in the future, you're at the It's Jeff chapter mark, but we're talking about Iron Man again. So that's the thing. But I know that the stream is at like a couple of seconds of lag for all of you. So it's kind of like I don't I just haven't found a clean way to do it. So you got to comment fast, basically, is what I'm saying. If you want me to feature your comment about the issue that we are on. Catabasis, as we've discussed, I love. This is issue number 5, which I think might be the last issue, but it's not on Global Comics yet. It's going to be on later this week, so we will talk about it next week. And we got that news live here, breaking news, from the actual owner, creator. I don't know. Black Box Comics was in the chat talking about it earlier. Killer Cobra, which is from Xenoscope, was on the schedule for this week, but the digital didn't come out this week. It's now scheduled for next week, so we'll talk about it next week. King Spawn. This, I keep saying that this is the good Spawn comic book. I'm starting to question what that even means. I feel really like gaslit by Spawn of like I'm reading the whole Spawn universe and I'm supposed to be enjoying it, and I'm enjoying that I'm reading the whole Spawn universe. But am I enjoying any of the books in the Spawn universe? I actually did do a catch-up read this week, and I forgot to put it on the schedule, so we'll talk about it maybe next week. But anyway, this is Spawn not with like heaven and hell nonsense to the max. This is Spawn on the ground doing stuff, and it was fine. It tracked well from last issue. Rory McConville's script definitely just pops more than a Todd McFarlane script. Yildray Sinar does a great job on art. Colors from Ivan Nunes, but this pretty much is all fallout from last issue. Like there's this kid who had been kidnapped. Spawn retrieves him and he's basically using him as bait, and so he's got to keep the kid on ice pretty much to like keep using him as bait, and nobody thinks this is ethical. And the thing that really made me think here is that like Spawn, it just feels like we get to know Spawn so little in Todd McFarlane's main Spawn title. He just is because he is. He does because he does. I think the reason I do like King Spawn is that here we get a little bit of a sense of who he is, but the problem that comes with that is I just don't think he's a very compelling character anymore, and I don't think he's easy to like. Like everything is just the ends justify the means. It's kind of like Xavier in Deadly Genesis mode, like, yeah, I'll sacrifice anybody to save the world. But it's gotten to a point where it's just not fun to see him succeed anymore, because his character is just that he'll do anything to save the world the way he thinks it should be saved, but that's all there is. There's no layers there. And then if somebody mentions his wife, he goes, Wanda. That's really all. And so I just really made me reflect that the reason I've been liking King Spawn is because it has him actually on the ground level, and at least when he's like punching a demon or tracking a demon or finding a vampire, hunting it to its cave and killing it, that one vampire, at least that feels personal, and it lets me feel closer to Spawn as a character, as opposed to all the heaven and hell stuff where he's like fighting against whole dimensions and the rip in time and the dead zones. It's like it just doesn't even feel like there's any identifiable personality in that. So this was not high quality, and yet I think the reason I'm liking it is because I feel like there's a character that I can relate to in King Spawn that I can't in other books. I dropped this book, The Loose End. I had been buying the first 2 issues from Hardcase, and it just was going to like a Very Bad Things, The Hangover, like Trip to Vegas, Bridesmaids, kind of just dull. Like, what's the point? Why did the story need to be told? I'm stuck. Oh, because I'm at the end of the Owls. Wow. Okay, so we made it halfway. So glad we almost made it, but now we're just going to keep going because you all are here and the internet is working, so we're just going to keep it up. So let me make my PDF big here, and we're going to talk now about the M's through Z's, because we're just chatting as we go today, apparently. So this is Marvel Rivals, which is back for another engagement on Marvel Unlimited, and this had writing by Paul Allor, art by Luca Claretti, colors from Dee Cunniffe, letters from Joe Sabino. I love this. I love this. Why? Because it's my Krakoa bullshit, baby. But not just that. No, not just that. I loved it because within this little dinky 12-page digital comic, Paul Allor thinks of a better ending for Krakoa than Krakoa had. I mean, it's kind of the same ending. Like, what if the robots come for us? But in this case, the robots are Ultron and all the Ultrons, and their goal is to gain access to the Krakoa database, not to stop mutants from regenerating, but to corrupt it and have access to all of the personalities and thoughts of all the mutants all through time. what a cool plot beat. Like, that's amazing. We're doing that in an out of continuity digital comic book about a video game. That's freaking brilliant. So like, it's 12 pages. You're going to scroll through it in a second. It'll get a physical issue in a couple of months, but like, it's this, I'm already nostalgic for Krakoa. And so I love the idea of that we can revisit Krakoa and like insert fundamentally intriguing stories into Krakoa. And Paul Aller is doing a great job of that right now. I mean, again, it's just the Marvel Rivals video game comic book, but I really liked it a whole lot. I did not read Mine is a Long Loathsome Grave. You know why? Because this cover promises a lot of supernatural nonsense. But then when I read issue number 2, which I made time for at the last second before the stream, the last time it came out, all it was people shooting at each other and there was no supernatural nonsense. So that violated my expectations and it made me believe I could not trust the cover. And now when I look at this cover based on last issue, I don't know what this could possibly be about because last issue was just about shooting people. So, you know, like comics is hard, man. I get it. It's hard to keep a promise every single issue and please me every single month. But as we're going to find out in the next couple of comics, but I just couldn't hang in there. So the next book was supposed to come out next week and I didn't even read it. And then people were saying they had read it and I discovered it was just out this week on Comixology. So I got it. It's called Moonshine Bigfoot. And I love this creative team. Mike Marlowe, Steve Ellis on pencils, also written and inked by Zach Howard, colored by Nelson Daniel. Great colors, lettered by Thompson Knox. The craft of this, especially from our perspective, was incredibly strong. And I loved, it just started out so stupid. And I loved how stupid it started out. I think, you know, James is in the comments right now saying it's got a Dukes of Hazzard vibe. I think it's very much got that. It's set in 1981. This Bigfoot has been raised by people and he's just a bootlegger in Florida trying to enjoy his car and his girlfriend and drive around. Here's the thing about that. You can establish a lot of goofy things for a comic book to do, but at some point it needs some kind of stakes. And this had established so much goofiness up to the middle part of the comic that I was like, okay, this is as goofy as it can get. And then it kept goofing. And then, so then it had a big action set piece that was also goofy and like worked like a Looney Tunes cartoon. I was like, oh, literally it referenced Looney Tunes. So I was like, okay, that's fine. But now maybe we'll get, after this, we'll get closer to the character. But then we went into like a bar that he goes to and sells his moonshine and it got even goofier. And then, so the thing was, it just was taking me to this like even Rick and Morty, which is very, very goofy and silly sometimes. Rick and Morty has a heart to its characters, and also the punchlines are frigging relentless, and it's smart. So it can afford to be goofy the whole time through. And maybe Rick and Morty isn't your thing, but I think a lot of things that are that goofy can afford to be that goofy straight through because they've got layers to them. And the thing with this is it was just goofy, and I never felt like I had a smart layer. I never felt like it had a heart layer. It was just goofy. So if you like the idea of just this like totally silly, funny, Looney Tunes-esque, and the art is so detailed. Like there's so much just in the trees, in the grass, on the cars, in the people's faces. There's just so much cool line work and shading and color everywhere that it was really easy to get lost in every page. But I just felt like it was just all it knew how to do was to be silly. And it just never really like had another level other than that. Oh boy, the internet's saying things are happening again. The internet's saying the internet again. Is it going to bounce back? Is it just punishing me for my beauty? We'll never know. It says it's strong. Like it's just really frustrating y'all. I'm trying not to let it get me down because what are you going to do? What are you going to do other than do your stream, right? But it's just getting me down a little bit. Oh, it seems like it pop back. All right, so Mothra, I did not read because as we established, not a big Godzilla person. I did read the New Gods. Look, so here's the thing. This is an art book. Like I am seeing Evan Kegel do things on these pages that I just can't, nobody else can do right now. Just the way that he's paneling this, like just that cut so close of Light Ray's face that we don't even get his whole face. We see him in motion. Like it's just so bold, so beautiful. This foot at the bottom of the page, so beautiful. Francesco Segala's colors, so beautiful. I just couldn't stop taking screenshots. The dark side style I-beams coming out of him and zooming around the panel, just the elongated bodies. There's just something about it. It almost reminds me of Larry Stroman, but like also he's so like bold and muscular. Like in a way, it reminds me of like even Rob Liefeld at its best. It reminds me of like Mobius. It's just there's so much in the art. And we're lucky there's so much in the art because this story is stupid. I just don't care. I get that in issue 3, Ram V unfurled this whole background of what's going on in the new apocalypse. But all I get is that people are invading it and they don't like Darkseid. So they're coming back and getting theirs now. It's just not interesting, really. There's no texture to it. It's being told at such an epic scope that the fight is fun. But then when you think about like why the fight's happening or like who are the new gods on New Genesis, are we rooting for them or not? It's just not that interesting to me. And then to also have the Justice League on the cover to only show Superman on the final panel of this issue. And again, to spend so little time with Mr. Miracle in the issue, even though he's the driver of the human plot that we can identify with. I just think this is a flop for me. And I know everybody's liking it. And this is one of these, like, Krisis has a different opinions. You cannot just say something is epic. I need to feel the epic and I need to feel the personal aspect moving within the epic. And this almost got there with Light Ray, who I do really enjoy and have been enjoying these issues, but it just feels like we're 5 issues into a 12-issue series and I don't know what this story is about. And it feels like in 5 issues, there's enough time that we could have had a whole arc and it just feels like nothing's even started yet. And I feel like this is the problem that Ram V always has when he has more than 6 issues to play with. He's only good in my mind. Ram seems like a really cool person. I've had exchanges with him online. He's from Philly with one of my people. It just doesn't seem like for me. It doesn't seem like he's got the juice to do anything past the 5-issue mark. Here we are at the 5-issue mark. Nothing's really happened, and we're going for another 7. So I'm just very frustrated with this comic book. Nightwing, I've been frustrated with because Dan Watters has not been making it weird enough. Well, let me tell you, this was almost my DC pick of the week. Dan Watters just puts a pause on the plot that he's been doing in a way that really works. Like last issue ended kind of with a cliffhanger, and he's like, what if we just move to the side of that? And I know that's going to really frustrate some people, but instead, what he does is starts a new arc that is basically Bloodhaven Central. Like he's doing Gotham Central in Bloodhaven with Maggie Sawyer as the perspective character, with Francesco Francavilla on art, who's always just beyond. And this has Nightwing almost as a guest in his own comic, which I know is going to bother some people, but it just works so well for me. It was so beautiful. And I think giving us like texture of what police work and the police force is like in Bloodhaven makes this whole thing about the weapons manufacturer coming in and kind of carpetbagging her way into having influence in the city so much more interesting. And this is just such a cool noir story about a cop that does things by the book. Does that mean you're a good person or a bad person if you do things by the book? If you've always done things by the book, does that mean you're obeying the rules or that you're breaking the rules that are not as written, that everybody assumes are norms, but you never quite break the rules that are in the book? And it has a really heartbreaking scene where Maggie Sawyer talks to some of the people who know this person who played things by the book. And we discover what by the book really means. And it was just really good. Spectacular issue. You don't have to have ever read a Nightwing comic before this. You don't have to have been reading this run of Nightwing. It just works, and it works extraordinarily well. Now, Power Man Timeless. I left this for last because I was hoping to avoid reading it. But then, as I was putting my covers PDF together, I realized it has Apocalypse and it's in continuity, and it might like have to do with Krakoa, and I'm gonna have to read it. So I read it, and it's just so bad. I did find one good page of art from Bernard Chang, colored by Marcelo Maiolo, of just Apocalypse hooked up to a bunch of stuff. I just like how vivid it is. I like how his blue and then the blood and the blue and the pink. I just really enjoyed it. But this comic, y'all, it's not about anything. It tries to be about anything for like one page where Apocalypse, it's like, it was always after the supremacy of the mutants and the survival of the fittest. It was always going to come down to mutants versus Inhumans. And I kind of like that. Like, go do that story, Jackson Kelling and Colin Lanny, because then it has Power Man thinking a lot about like why he's got all of his powers, and I just don't care about this Power Man from the future. And then somebody separates him from the Void, so now we have the Void, half of the century from the future, but unleashed. Wouldn't it be more interesting if we looked at where the Void was in the present day and the fact that there's no current active century? What does that mean for the Void? Where's the Void in the current day? I don't understand who this is for. I don't understand what the story is about. There were some really cool lettering effects, so congratulations, Travis Lanham, but I just don't understand the point of this comic book. I was going to catch up on Redcoat this week, despite hating it, because I did make that Ghost Machine guide on Crushing Krisis, but I just didn't have the time. But I am going to try Redcoat again, because you all keep saying that it's good, and I do really like Brian Hitch. Rogue Sun was my image pick of the week. It was good. It was fine. I love Ryan Parrott and Nick Cotton just have a way of keeping it moving, and I love that. Like, this is just it's very Spider-Man-esque. It's very kind of like quippy heroes quipping. It has Radiant Black guest star. I don't usually enjoy Radiant Black, who's the anchor character of the Massive Verse, but he's used well here. And like, I like that he's kind of like the big brother person they can rely on because he's like the more established hero, but also he's still a loser. And they're still like, well, you are a loser. And that really worked for me because he is a total loser. But also, this whole interplay between the two different people who have the rogue son really worked for me. I love also how this vibe of they're just trying to keep supernatural stuff at bay in New Orleans, you know, like there's werewolves with wings and they just have to beat them back sometimes. But then sometimes they're into the werewolf trailer park culture, and the werewolf trailer park grandma is like, can't you just leave my people alone? It's like, it's just really interesting. There's like a whole ball of familial and societal stuff there that I think Ryan Parrott and Nick Cotton are handling really, really well. And I think the art from Abel and Bruno Frenda really, really worked well. I think the colors from Natalia Marquez worked well. It just really, really kept me hooked. I don't think it was like top quality superhero, but I love indie superhero, and I love indie shared universe superhero because I'm a whore for shared universes. And so I just really think from that perspective, seeing Radiant Black pop up here and seeing the relationship that these characters have to him really worked for me. Even if this wasn't like the highest quality comic that I've read this week, it still was one of the comics that I enjoyed the most this week. Captain America Sam Wilson, I have really had challenges with this series because it just hasn't felt like it's being written particularly well, and the artist keeps changing every issue, but there's no like story trope to make it make sense that the art keeps changing. So I'm just like, why are we changing the artists again? This one was by Chris Campana with inks from Jonas Trinidad and colors from First Fuentes Sujo, still of course written by Greg Pak and Evan Narcisse. I really liked this issue. It really worked. It's the first time this worked for me at all. And I think it's because we have all of these heroes in one place. I think Chris Campana handles action and moving these characters around on panel and showing the relation of physical places to each other so much better than any of the artists we've had on this title so far. His faces are a little gawky, and I'm just a purist. I like a certain kind of very beautiful comic book face. So when I see faces that are like a little square or a little grimacy or a little awkward, to me, in my head, I'm always deducting points for that. It doesn't mean that it's a bad comic book, though. And honestly, I think the beat that gets played here is Sam Wilson is so angry that this technology company is taking advantages of his words, black and brown people, that he just wants to destroy it all. And usually Sam Wilson is like the good one. He's the better angel on the shoulder of Captain America. He's the social worker. He cares about people and their lives. And so it's kind of like this really interesting beat of him being like, no, I want to break it all down. And all the other people around him, like Patriot, like, what is this guy? Shadow Soldier? Shadow Soldier, all saying to him, like, hold on, back up. Like, all you're seeing right now is your anger. You've got to think about like what's actually good for people and good for our families and good for black and brown people, if that's who you claim that you really, really care about. And it really worked for me. I just wish all of this series was of this same quality and of the same thoughtfulness. But also, I think, again, I think we are sometimes a little bit, we don't think about the interplay between the writers and the artists. I think this particular matchup of Greg Pak and Evan Narcisse with this artist helped this story really hit. Maybe the story's been this good all along and they've just had the wrong artists. Then we come to Shadow of the Golden Crane. Look, at this point, we know what this series is. It's just this, it's in the 50s of Hellboy, and this lady's going around and people are haunted and she touches the artifact and then she sees into the past of that artifact. And they're all from China and they're all haunted, right? I just think if that's the thing you're doing, give us more about history, give us more about culture, give us more folklore. This one does go back to China, and it does say like where we are in the Chinese dynasty history, and it says it's during the time of the only woman emperor of China, so that was interesting. But then it just didn't really feel like, and there were some interesting things about their clothing, and that's the stuff that I was lingering on. I liked feeling like I really had gone back in time and I was learning something about a historical period. But then ultimately it's just one more ghost thing. And it's the same thing that's happened in the last two issues. We defeat the ghost thing in the past, and then in the present, the woman's like, oh, I know how to defeat this ghost thing. Close the lid. And then they close the lid, and then the ghost thing's defeated. And it just feels like, pour moi, for me, I don't understand why this is a 4-issue series. Like each of the anthologized versions of touching these artifacts and having visions of them and seeing what about them is good or bad or evil or can be dehaunted or whatever, it just feels like the same story over and over again. So I think if you're going to have a comic that is actually a narrative and not just an anthology and has consistent characters, and you're going to use it to frame a story that's an anthologized story in every issue, you have to make sure that you're telling me a different beat in each one of those anthologized stories, or else it just starts to feel like it's the same issue being delivered over and over again. Last month, I read Sister Imperator because it said it's from the world of Ghost, and stupid me thought that it meant Ghost of Dark Horse Comics, like Ghost from World's Greatest Superheroes back from like 1992 or 94, whenever that happened. And I was like, oh, I love Ghost. So I read it. It turns out it's like some band or something, which I totally endorse. The bands have characters in their songs or writing comics about them. But it just was kind of like a misery porn issue about like this lady's been abused a whole lot. Now this cover is gorgeous, but I just felt like I'm not a fan of that band necessarily. And I don't really like misery porn comics. So I just couldn't get excited about reading another one, but it was very well done. And if you know who this band, I guess called Ghost, is, they're doing a great job in their comic book. I just don't have a connection to it. Spectacular Spider-Man, it's crazy to me that I was so relieved that this comic book actually put the Spider-Man on panel, that I talk about gaslighting. I was like, that's enough. It's enough. They're just on the panel. That must mean it's good. Then I went back and read it. It wasn't actually good. It was fine. The color, I really like the colors, actually. Edgar Delgado's colors here are one of my favorite things about this comic book. It's not by the normal artist. Andres Genole is not usually the artist who's drawing this book, but it still kind of worked. I really like the other artist even better, but I do always really like Genole. I don't always like Genole on masked figures. I actually like his facial acting and stuff more, and so I liked what he did with the characters who weren't just masked here, but it was good. But here's the thing, nothing actually happens. I know I say that a lot. I want to define it here because I really was thinking about what I mean by that when I say it, when I was reading this comic book. The Spider-Men restrain Lizard successfully. Is that plot? No, it's just action of actually Kurt Connors walks in and he's like, calm down, Lizard. So the Spider-Men didn't do that. Then the Spider-Man are looking for where the Electros had his son captive. So they're looking around the city for it. And actually Shift, Miles's clone brother, swings in and he's like, I found him. So they didn't actually find the brother. And then at the end, they reunite the Lizard family, and the Lizard family like has a reckoning with the separated version of Kurt Connors as the Lizard. The Spider-Man didn't really do that either. Then they have their friend who got hurt at the coffee shop, and she's in the hospital. They have nothing to do like this. So I just feel like, yes, they were on panel, and I was relieved that they were on panel, and I enjoyed their spider quips, but it just really feels like they're not actually participants in their own comic book. They're just showing up for scenes, and the scenes are happening because of other people. So it's like participation is the bare minimum. I need to get past participation to the point where these characters are actually active forces in their own comic book. So it was fine, but I certainly can't recommend it. Star Trek Defiant, I did not read, but it's part 2 of Lore War, which kicked off last week with a one-shot for Lore War. Star Wars Beyond Victory was a special physical issue at some kind of Star Wars gathering in Japan, so I don't know if it'll ever turn up in digital, but of course I love a Film Noto cover. Then we come to Star Wars Legacy of Vader, and this was actually the comic that inspired my Moment of Krisis today. This was my top pick of the week for Marvel. This was such abject, horrible bullshit. And it makes me even angrier than it normally would, because it's by Charles Soule, who's very capable, and Luke Ross, who, how could we possibly waste an issue of Luke Ross's art when it's so good, especially colored by Nolan Woodard? I mean, this is like best at Marvel, best in the industry stuff. He can do the likenesses, he can do the technology. His Darth Vader and the visions that Kylo Ren has here was thrilling. But again, this is a comic book where the lead character is only not even a participant in his story. The whole comic, this whole book, is Kylo Ren gets electrocuted. That's the whole book. And eventually he's like, there's power in being electrocuted. Yes, more. And then he blows up the whole house of the person who's electrocuting him. Do we see that? No, it happens off panel. Then he fights his way into somebody else's, the Hutt's place to get back his lightsaber. Do we see that? No, it all happens off panel. Everything that actually would have given us agency or action or like a moment to appreciate this character happens off panel. And what do we get on panel? Visions of Darth Vader, which are nice. Visions of Darth Vader, which are nice, but that's not story, and that's not agency, and that's not action. And then him being electrocuted some more. So like, what is this about actually? Because I forget that this was $3.99 or $4.99. It took me 2.5 minutes to read. Then I at least went back and like looked more closely at the arc because Luke Ross's art is so good. But why is this such a problem endemic to Marvel? And it's not a problem that I'm having with as many of the indies. It's not a problem at DC. To me, that points to editorial at Marvel. Like, what are they doing that they think that this script from Charles Soule, who's a wonderful writer, is sufficient, right? So Mikey Basso, Drew Baumgartner, Mark Panacea, C.B. Cebulski, what is your editorial policy right now where you're just putting out comics to put out comics? Because this is not the only Marvel comic book I had this reaction to this week. Spectacular Spider-Man felt that way to me. Ultimate Wolverine, which we're going to get to, felt this way to me. Even Exceptional X-Men feels like there's no content there. Why is the Marvel method right now a method of wasting my fucking time? I don't understand. And this was the comic that was my pick of the week. I like the artist on it. I like the creator. I like everything about it. And for it to be paced so badly and to just misunderstand what makes a comic interesting in such a fundamental way, it's either a me problem, and maybe it's a me problem. Maybe I'm expecting too much. Maybe reading 45 comic books a week has actually just made my bar get so high that I'm refusing to accept anything that's mediocre. But if you liked this comic, I don't think you're demanding enough from your comic books, because I'm here to tell you, as somebody who's read almost 2,000 comic books already this year, you can ask for more. Even from a Star Wars comic, you can ask for more than this. And a good comic that's worth your time and worth your $4 or $5 is going to give you something much more satisfying than just a panel of Darth Vader looking cool. And I know there's value in art, and we talked earlier in the show between the internet outages about how there's the value in the utility of things, but there's also value in the beauty of things. And having a beautiful painting on your wall is valuable. So I do think it's valuable to see beautiful drawings by Luke Ross of Darth Vader, but to ask me if I would have spent $5 to see those couple of panels of Darth Vader, and if the thrill of those made it worth it experiencing and owning this comic, I would tell you no. By the way, some people in the comments were saying that my reaction to Ghost was also their reaction to Ghost. They thought it was going to be that Ghost. I agree. And there's a compendium coming from that Ghost in October. I am so going to be buying that because I love Ghost, and I think so many great creators have been on that comic. I would buy every single compendium, collection, whatever that they put out of that World's Greatest Superheroes or whatever that line was called in Dark Horse. You guys always remind me what it is because I always forget. I owned so many of them originally. I have the Dark Horse omnibus of all the original #1s. X came out of that. Barbed Wire came out of that. There's so many cool books that came out of that. And so I cannot wait, much like Ghost, Cruel Angel, I cannot wait for that compendium. Yeah. A lot of people chiming in with similar things about Marvel. I look at my Marvel list right now and I dread it. Like when I tell you I had to make this the top pick because I was like, what is there to pick? There's no good comics to pick. It just feels like a total bankruptcy in the ability to tell compelling stories. And that fish rots from the head. Like that's C.B. Cebulski at the top. I've heard that he's a good talent scout. I've heard that he's a good artist rep. And I will say Marvel's got some killer artists working for them right now. But the stories are just nowhere. And I just have to wonder if like maybe they have an editor-in-chief right now who's just like has bad taste in stories. And so we're just getting a bad period of stories. But Marvel, they're not going to survive, especially in this whole tariffs world and with all the upheaval right now. Marvel is not a permanent fixture in the landscape of publishing. There have been many times in Marvel's past, in my lifetime, that Marvel almost died. And I know there's Marvel zombies out there who will do the work to keep them alive, but I am one of those Marvel zombies. And I just hate their comic books so much right now. It's crazy how much I hate them. So I just don't know what they're doing. So let's continue the Summer of Superman special. This was by the new Superman Brain Trust. Two of them are the same Superman Brain Trust we've had, which is Mark Waid, who's going to be writing Action Comics again, which I'm very excited about because he writes a terrific Action Comics, and Joshua Williamson, who I'm starting to feel like with Joshua Williamson, things are never great. He just writes the most okayest okay comics. And I know that's a lie because I do sometimes think his comics are great. I love the first year of his Green Arrow. I'm enjoying his G.I. Joe. I love Nailbiter. But he is an artist or a writer, writers are artists. He's a comics artist that just gets into, he's like his own ChatGPT. He's under the blanket in his Dutch oven of comic book writing, huffing his own comic book farts and just like regurgitating the same scripts over and over again. And it just feels like they never go anywhere. But the real interesting thing here is the middle chapter, which was by Dan Slott. This was all on Lana Lang's wedding day. And it has like the past of Superman hanging with Lana in the past, and then the present with Dan Slott writing it, and then some portents of the future, which I'll get to in a second. Immediately, Dan Slott is writing women badly. And this is just a Dan Slott thing. He's good at many things. He's good at young heroes. He's good at quippy people. He's not really good at writing paragons of virtue like Superman who aren't that funny. And he is terrible at writing women. He minimizes sidelines and turns into harpies pretty much every woman character he can get his hands on in every run. And he has been doing this for the past 20 years. And now we have him coming on board to a comic book that has a huge female supporting cast, especially with Lois Lane. And the way the tonal aspect of this just shifts, and it's not like he does anything super misogynist. It's not like he's like, Superman is like telling the women to like go wash some dishes, but just like the way immediately you can feel the vision of the plot shift away from all the characters have equal standing, and the women start to become like annoyances and hindrances to the plot of the men. I just felt like I didn't even know actually that Dan Slott wrote the middle chapter. I'd forgotten who wrote what, and I just felt it happen, like, woo, it just shifted immediately. And then when I went back and looked at the credits, I said, oh, of course it felt that way, because Dan Slott's writing it. I think Dan Slott has positive qualities. Dan Slott, if you're ever watching this, fuck you. I think that you are a internet troll, and you need to get on the internet and try to turn in more than one script per month. But I hope you're not watching this, and if you're not, great. I just wish, like, put him on a comic where there's no women and he can just write his like quippy lead Spider-Man-esque hero or some kids, because he's not the right writer for Superman. We'll see. I give everything a chance, but I just had bad feelings. Oh, Dan Slott wrote Sue Richards horribly. And the thing is, Dan Slott thinks that if he gives his woman feats, that like that will make up to it, but then he still writes their person. Like Sue Richards with this horrible, awful, whiny nag throughout all of his. She just was constantly nagging, complaining. Like that was all her character was during his four. So, okay. But then it had a future tease, which I like. Okay, I'm not a big. It has to do with the Legion of Superheroes. Minor spoilers. I don't have a strong connection with the Legion. And it just feels like Josh Williamson, again, nothing's ever about anything. He just is like, and then the Legion. And then he's like, it's coming up, the biggest story. It's going to be the Legion. And then I just wonder if anything's going to happen in that issue too. But that's just Josh Williamson's writing. I'm very excited for Mark Waid on Action though. So because of Marvel's paucity of quality, it turned out that Superior Avengers was my pick of the week. And it does a lot of things that I hate. But I got to talk about its positive qualities. Luca Maresca's art, and they draw most of it. Kyle Holtz does one page with a reason, and Matea Iancono is the colorist. The art is so beautiful. It's so clear. This is a whole cast of characters that we've deliberately never met before, which is apparently what Steve Fox is great at doing right now, because he's also doing it on New Champions. Everything immediately made sense about it. I immediately knew who they were. I understood who their personalities were because of how they moved. Their powers were easy to understand. It saved a lot of the need for narration because the art was that good, which is the argument for not having as much narration in a modern comic book, which is the art does so much of the lifting. And Luca Maresca here really giving us a masterclass on how well the art can do the heavy lifting, so you don't have to over explain. But then you find yourself wondering, who are these people? Like, they don't even seem like the Dr. Octopus I know. It doesn't seem like a Black Panther that I know. It doesn't seem like an Onslaught or a Magneto that I know. And Steve Fox reveals why they're not the ones that we know. It makes a lot of sense, and it's so doomed. It's the most McDoomerston plot that there could possibly be, which makes it so great to have it be a part of One Nation Under Dune. And at the last moment, it twists the knife on us. Like, they're not who we thought we were. And then we find out who they are. And then at the end, they're a little bit more not who we thought they are. I think this should be called Thunderbolts, especially because that has a ghost in it, especially because it's just the levels of not who you thought, not who you thought, not who you thought, not who you thought. That's so Thunderbolts. I know that we have the Thunderbolts comic right now called Thunderbolts Doomstrike because Winter Soldier is in it, and Marvel is trying to do this thing where Winter Soldier equals Thunderbolts. But to me, this has 1997 Kurt Busiek Thunderbolts energy. And to me, this was the perfect balance of Steve Fox. It just feels like so often he's like hurrying to get as many elements into a comic book as he can. Here, those elements came in the genius defining of these cool characters. I almost said who they were, and I'm not going to reveal it. And I think because he got to put all of his creative efforts into distinguishing these really neat characters to be drawn and to exist in the script, it didn't feel like the script itself was overpacked, which so often Steve Fox scripts do. So I'm actually really excited about this. Like, I'm excited for more. And I did not think I was going to feel that way. My write-up about the Sun-Crushing Krisis was like, what's the point? I don't recognize any of these characters. Why do we even need this book? But no, actually, it goes to show you cannot just rely on the solicits. Sometimes you really need to go in and think about it. Max saying, honestly, because it's a Doom team, I'm surprised it's not called the Even More Fantastic Four or something. Like, right, like, call it like the Doom Four, the Superior Four. I don't understand why it's Superior Avengers. I mean, I'm sure we're going to find they're Doom's Avengers. That is the point, and the book does kind of articulate that. But I would agree. Like, I just feel like there are other things that could have been called. I can see why they're the Avengers. But anyway, I really liked it. I don't know if it grows to the level of being a Crisis recommendation. Like, I don't think it like killed me the way Nightwing killed me, the way DC. I have one book that I'm telling you to go out and buy this week is DC X Sonic. But that said, it just was really delightful, and it made me think, and it made me curious. And I mean, what else can you ask for, really? I continue to read The Surgeon on Global Comics. Even though it came out already digitally, and it's continuing to come out physically, but I'm reading it digitally as it comes out physically. So the interesting thing about this, and I unfortunately don't seem to have actually remembered to save the credits page, unfortunately, is the artist changed to somebody, Zaldar and Foster. So it's a different artist, and I think it's even a different colorist. And I immediately know, I was like, what's wrong? Something's wrong. And the thing is, the art is still pretty strong. It's similar quality to what it was, but the storytelling of the other artists was just so specific. And to switch 3 issues in, it just really, really felt it. And it really, again, made me think of that thing I said about Flash Gordon and about a couple of other books on the stream, which is like, sometimes the alchemy, it's greater than the sum of its parts. And I really think that was a thing here. Like, the art was contributing to why this was so remarkable to me. Here, it just feels like a fine indie comic that's kind of Mad Maxy and kind of Walking Dead-y, and it has an interesting conundrum for our heroine. There's a very cool medical thing that happens, very ER, like, oh no, a bad thing has happened, we've got to save them in a hurry. What's the way we can give an antidote to this thing that really has no antidote? That was fun. I really enjoyed that. It just wasn't as like breathtakingly great as the first 3 issues were, because I just think that art team, and unfortunately, I'm so oh, you know what it is? I do have it. It's just that the resolution of things is so different from Global Comics that it just comes up really, really small on my screen. Hold on. I want to tell you who the artists are, because it's important to credit the creators on these things. So this is John Pence writing, Omar Zaldivar penciling and inking, and some made up name of colors. I'm sorry. It is literally made up. It's pinkier. It has a number in it. Pink 3er on colors. And that's a different team that has been coloring it and drawing and creating the previous issues. They did a fine job. It's fine. It's even better than fine. It's good. It's just not as exciting as it was for me previously. Okay. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This comic book is, if you have ever liked Ninja Turtles, and if you have the patience to see them kind of at odds with each other, and you just don't need them cartooning around cartoonily, you need to be reading this comic. You do not need to start from issue number 1. Just buy this issue. Just buy the previous issue. Even though it's not a one-shot story, Jason Aaron makes every issue feel so substantial that you can really pick up anything. On this, talk about value for your money, I felt like I was reading this for hours. It actually only was like 10 or 11 minutes, but I was so lost in it. I was so absorbed in the world of this comic book. Stoops loves this comic book. I love it too, Stoops. I was so completely absorbed by it that time lost meaning while I was reading it. We got to talk about the art. Juan Ferrer's art in this, the way he's coloring himself, and like just this bottom panel here of Leonardo and how dimensional his face is, and like the shadows and the light, but like the levels of the light, like he's shadowed. There's the bars of the sewer grate over his face, but then there's the highlight of the top light on him that's making his nose actually look round, because when you put highlight on the top of something, it looks rounder, something that I'm working with every day. Like it just for that one panel, And just the amount of motivated light that's actually in the space that he's playing with and tracking throughout the panels in the stage. And then also to play that because of where the light is, from this perspective, Donatello sitting on the ground there is silhouetted and backlit. Like, oh my, like I love art that makes me think about art in a good way. Not makes me think of like where the lighting should come from, but makes me suddenly interested in where the lighting is coming from. That to me is good comic book art. And then the story that's happening right now, the turtles just like do not trust each other anymore. And that's a hard thing. Like, you know, people talk about families love and like, you always love your family, but what happens if you still love them and you just don't trust them anymore? And that's really with the beat that this is playing. And it's such an interesting beat. And I get for some people, they might be like, but I just want to see the turtles being turtles. Well, there's 150 issues of this previously from the previous run that's in continuity of this run. And there's the Saturday morning adventures, which are a perfectly fine comic book to read. Saturday morning adventures are a fine thing to read, even though it's like a kid quality thing. So like, I just think that this is so remarkably great. I think anybody who's interested in turtles can read it. Jarm Parles is saying, how would I compare this as a first TMT series compared to the previous IDW series is incredible. And it's got 150 issues and there's so many side series and mini series that if you read it in the reading order that I think I have completely on Crushing Crisis, but it's also the order that's in the hardcover deluxe collections that now are being recollected in paperback. It just reads so well. And the great thing is if you get a little bit bored, you can just skip any mini series you want to. You don't have to read them. And like, or just skip ahead. Like the book just transforms and has so many great story arcs. I would say like every year or two, there's like one big overarching story or conflict. So in the first 100 issues, it just has like six kind of big overarching stories that happen. And they're just all so good and so satisfying. I don't really like issues 101 to 150. It just gets to be a very cutesy cottagecore comic book, which is not what I'm here for Ninja Turtles on. So I imagine some of the people who like that run are probably annoyed by this run. But to me, this run gets closer to what I liked about the series already. I'm not reading Thundercats every week. I'm tempted because I am so deeply into my Thundercats bullshit full time, constantly. But I just don't like Declan Shalvey's writing. So maybe one week that I just don't have much to catch up on, I will catch up on this. This week I had a lot of other things I wanted to catch up on that I didn't even have time for. Titans, he's back. So I didn't love this cover. And I was like, oh, it's going to be all about, they're like, oh no, Deathstroke's back, like for the whole issue. No, this was so good. This actually almost was my pick of the week as well. Four comics from DC that I almost picked as my pick of the week. When at Marvel, I struggled to decide if they even had it. I almost came on here and said there's no pick of the week from Marvel, but instead I picked Superior Avengers because it surprised me in an interesting way. This was so good. The reason it was so good, first of all, this art from Daniel Bayliss, I don't know how they have this art that everybody looks as good as everybody else. Part of it is because the colors from, actually, he's coloring himself, so I can't even credit a colorist. He's just that good. Yeah, I mean, Pete Woods is usually the artist, but this works perfectly with Pete Woods. I love this because the action that they're in is they're just cleaning up an easy mess. Like, we already know when they get into this fight that it's a fight that they're going to be able to solve. There's just one escaped convict. Nightwing is mostly using his dad Batman energy to like solve the mystery of how the convict escaped. There's never a real question that they're going to win this fight. That's not the point. The point is to see them interacting with each other during the fight, to see their personalities come through, to see the bonds that keep them so close as a team of Titans, but also like the little kind of like cracks in the armor that have started to heal from the previous run but are still existing. That's the whole point of what is going on here. And I really think that is what made this comic book pretty great. And then the Deathstroke plot, what I think could have been annoying, like it could have been like, oh, Deathstroke being an evil villain, actually really, really worked for me because it wasn't that. It was actually Deathstroke kind of doing the things the Titans were doing in reverse, where it was like Deathstroke being like, I don't trust any of you. You're all here for a reason. Like there's no teamwork. There's no trust. And like, it was just really interesting that John Lennon, you know, compared the Titans and the way that people are always trying to shake them because the real power of the Titans is their relationship to each other versus Deathstroke, who's just very usurious. Like he just uses people and tosses them away, much like he used and tossed away Terra. But now this also has a little moment with Terra, who I didn't even realize was still around at this point, where it's like, well, maybe she's taking her turn at using him. It just worked incredibly well, and I'm really, really enjoying Titans right now. Oh boy. Next Imaginauts dropping some kind of knowledge here. They're under a mandate by Disney. He's talking about Marvel, of course, to hew as conservative, which is also synonymous for them with nostalgia-driven, since that's easy for them and an easy and effective method for manipulating lowest common denominator readers as possible creatively and marketing wise because of the greater prevailing precarity of Disney and Marvel's multimedia IPs for the time. Yeah, and as always, next to Maginaut's analysis is straight on. I don't think we necessarily mean conservative here in the political sense. I don't think Marvel's books are incredibly conservative because honestly, it's a very liberal leaning writing team, and so it'd be really hard to enforce them having conservative stories. I think it's conservative in the true dictionary meaning of the word in a non-political way, where it's just conserving things. It doesn't want to let things go. It's using things in a miserly way. It's kind of stringing us along as long as possible, and I think it's being really conservative even in saying that they're interested in putting out comic books, right? Because we keep hearing this it might not even make 10 issues. If you don't want to make comic books, don't make comic books. But I think that that's the thing, that when Marvel's at a low tide creatively, possibly because they have a terrible editor-in-chief, I don't know, and possible terrible editors all the way down, as I think about then what is left of Marvel's identity if the story editing is not going to be strong enough, and what's left of Marvel's identity at that point is just the fact that they're an IP factory. And so they get very, very conservative, and they're just like, we got to just keep the books coming out. The trains have got to run on time. We need the books coming out. They got to have the characters in them, and there's just no spark there. And there's so few books at Marvel that have spark. And I think any books that have spark feel very specific to the creators. The Jed MacKay books feel like they're a spark. Cody Ziegler books feel like there's a spark, but then Jonathan Hickman, of course, does, but then so many other books just don't. And I feel like we've seen so many of these creators do good things in other contexts that there's got to be a why there. There's got to be a why there. Somebody didn't see something coming. You never know. You never know what I'm going to say. And I never know what you're reacting to. Oh, Dan Slott. Yeah. I just remember being on the CBR boards back in the day, and he was on the CBR boards, which is cool, interact with your people. But if you even mentioned a little bit, one little problem you had with Spider-Man, not even saying that like this book sucked, if you're like, oh, I didn't really like the blah, he would be like on the board 2 seconds later telling you, no, you're wrong, you're stupid, you didn't understand what I meant, or like, and he's like that on Twitter. Like he must have Google alerts set for himself that out like on every possible network with every possible version of his name, and he's like Beetlejuice. Like if you said his name even 2 times, he would just show up and start trolling you. Meanwhile, editors are always talking about how he like doesn't turn in scripts, and he always needs like Chris Gage to come and like save him and like write the things he's behind on writing. As somebody who wastes tons of times on the internet, especially if I have Reddit or Discord available to me on any given day, the answer, Dan Slott, is stop name searching yourself. So yeah, I just have I actually really enjoy a lot of Dan Slott comics. I've loved Spider-Boy so much. I'm so sad that he's not going to be writing anymore. But Dan Slott himself, I don't think I actually enjoy as a person. I did not read Tomorrow Girl. Here's what I'm going to say about this. Antarctic, I hope you're listening, Antarctic Press. I looked on YouTube. I found one video talking about one of the past issues of this series. You know how many views it had? 7. Had 7 views. Now, I'm not saying, you know what? One day I had 7 views. I'm not saying I'm superior because I have more views right now. That's not what this is about. I'm saying you don't have anybody talking about your comic books. I get that maybe they're for a certain group of people, maybe they're for a certain kind of reader, but if you want to grow that, you need people to talk about your comic books. I'm here and I'm willing to read anything, and I'm willing to bet that even if this is terrible, I don't know, it might not be, that it's probably still better than at least half of what Marvel Comic Books is doing right now. But you're not selling them digitally, so I can't find that out. So what you need to do is you need to send me comps. I'll reach out to you because I could be talking about all of your comics every week, and there are at least a few more people than 7 watching this right now. And even if I don't like it, you might find that your books connect with the people who like them if I would just talk about them. But hey, there's my pitch. Okay. This book made me question everything. Everything I know to be true about myself, about comic books. Not because it was thought-provoking, but because it was the biggest piece of lazy, unmotivated, badly crafted garbage that I think I've read from Marvel. I can't say so far this year because I'm also reading Phoenix, but horrible. And let's do something I don't do too much, which is talking about how the lettering is killing a comic book. This comic will never be one of my favorite comics because I hate Corey Petit's approach to lettering. This is the same thing I said in the first issue. He's doing this like bold primary and secondary colors thing. Also throw some pastels in there. The colors are fighting with the art. It's like Cory Petit is playing a game of telephone with Alessandro Capuccio and Brian Valenza, where he's not allowed to see what they're going to put on the page. And so he just picks these colors, and these are not easy to read colors. Like black text on that dark green, that's not easy to read. And those captions are happening throughout the issue. Because guess what this issue is about? Nothing. It's about nothing. It's about Wolverine. It's not, maybe this is what Wolverine is saying is in his head. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just an allegory of a wolf fighting a bear, but it's just a wolf stalking a bear. And then, but that's what's happening in our minds, or in Wolverine's mind. And then in the room, they're worried because Wolverine's heart rate is spiking. It's this same page for 20 pages. 20 pages of this. The wolf stalks. The wolf is stalking. Specimen. And then these people arguing, you want to kill us all. This man may die. We need to. Heart rate's dropping. Blood pressure is bottoming out. We need to administer medical. This is crazy. I can't. You don't like it. Leave it. But you'll need to answer for it, I think. We administered 800 milligrams. What? Are you trying to kill him? Look, I'm not saying I can't follow it. I'm not a little baby. I can follow your stupid fucking captions that you're writing in place of writing a script that anybody writes to read. Chris Condon, I was on your side, Chris Condon, in the first issue of this series. But what I'm realizing is all you had was an idea to draw us in by featuring about a bunch of X-Men in the Ultimate Universe, and you don't actually have a plot. You don't actually have any writing. I'm questioning if you have any talent, actually, at this point. I'm sorry, that was mean. He might be a really nice person. I find that creators do sometimes watch this show, and I'm only trying to say fuck you to Dan Slott. I'm not trying to say that to everybody else. Everybody else I hold in very high regard. But Chris Condon, I'm questioning everything about everything, because this wasn't even a comic book. It wasn't even a comic book. I'm speaking Simlish. I'm so angry. It didn't even tell a story. Nothing actually happened. It just was this idea that you had that you wanted to do a spin on Barry Smith's Weapon X, where we didn't actually get to see the carnage that was happening, and you're going to give us a bunch of disconnected caption boxes that like maybe would have made us imagine what might be happening in the room. But then the caption boxes sucked because all of Cory Petit's choices on this issue sucked, and then the whole issue sucked because it just sucked. And when I was done, I looked at the price and I said, $4.99. This took me like 90 seconds to read, and I was incandescently angry for the entire 90 seconds. This was bad enough that I might drop the whole Ultimate line. Like, I'm so angry about this issue that I might nuke my reading of Marvel Ultimate Comics. Hair stuck in my face. Everything's awful. I might nuke my reading of Marvel Ultimate Comics from space. There it is. Because I was so angry about how I don't care if any of you enjoyed it. You know what? I don't care if any of you enjoyed it, because this is lazy comic book making. This is the thing. I think this is why actually I don't like certain authors, and you hear me rant, they're like, they were fine. I do not like an author who puts trope above story. There's no narrative here. The thing is, you're supposed to just be like, oh, that trope where he did it all in narrative boxes and we never saw what was happening was cool. That puts trope above narrative. For the amount of time that I have in my life to read comics, for the amount of money that comics cost, you got to come to it with an idea, my brother. You got to have an idea with you when you write this comic. And this did not have an idea. All it had was a trope. In fact, I almost saved the final. In fact, I did save the final data page. I paid the whole $4.99 for this one data page. And the data page was incredibly clever. So it told me that Chris Condon does have some ideas. I'm going to fully spoil it for you because I don't give a fuck about if anybody buys this comic book. Here's what the data page says. A few notes on Cerebellum, Xavier, and Phoenix. The Charles Xavier body remained in a freezer beneath the Kremlin for some years after his death under the purview of Directorate X. Nobody quite knew what to do with it. I had read the files concerning the Xavier specimen and found them to be captivating. Okay, this isn't fair. I don't want to steal anybody's creativity. I'm not going to read the whole page for it. And this is probably too small, but you could zoom in and read it. And it's only one page. And I only ever show 2 or 3 pages from any comic book because I don't want to steal. I want you to go and read them. This whole show is about how much I love comics and how I want you to go and spend money and time on them. But this was the only worthwhile thing. And the thoughts on this data page, this was like a Krakoa Hickman level thought. And Hickman probably set up this thought, actually, because Hickman is the architect of the Ultimate Universe. So I felt Hickman's fingerprints all over this, even if Chris Condon wrote it. But at the point that the only thing that was memorable and the only plot that happened in a comic book was on the data page at the end, like, you got to really question what you're doing here. And this, I'm finding that my net on this Ultimate line is it's a failure. Because I hate Ultimate X-Men. I now hate Ultimate Wolverine. I hate Ultimate Black Panther. Ultimate Spider-Man is fine, but I think we would be happy with any Spider-Man book that would let him be an adult and have children and like be in love with Mary Jane. So really, this whole line comes down to what Dennis Camp is doing on Ultimates, which is just telling a very liberal story on a comic book that's really delightful to read. Like, that's not a line of comic books. That's just 2 very distinct ideas that happen to be operating in the same space. And honestly, I think they are both putting trope above story as well, because is Ultimate Spider-Man that good of a comic book? Or is it just that we want that older Spider-Man with kids? That's trope above story. Is the story actually good? Is Is there a story in Ultimates? I would posit, no, there's not a story really in Ultimates. It's mostly just about the cool liberal idea that Dennis Camp has every month and expresses through introducing new characters. So I'm going to come out and say, I think the Ultimate Comics line is a failure. Maybe I'll just repeat all this next week as my moment of crisis, because this issue, I'm so enraged about this issue that it really made me question my whole belief system. Okay. Then we had Usagi Yojimbo. I think the thing for me about Stan Sakai's Usagi is that I know that it's supposed to be storybook quality, but I sometimes want it to be lovelier. And when it's not lovely and it's like a little bit gawky, when I know that's what you get, like this is not like a high polished comic book. I do hate his lettering, which is funny because he could won an Eisner for lettering. I would not give that man an Eisner for lettering, but when it's gawky, I feel like I need it to be even more delightfully storybooky. And the first issue of this was, and I loved it. It felt just like this beautiful allegory of a story within a story within a story. This is just a lot of Usagi and his two companions going from room to room and being like, what's that? Oh no, somebody died. I'm eating some plums. And like, which is fine, because I think that this comic is not high art. It's meant to just be like an easy to read story, but I need it to get lovelier. Like I need it to be closer to the prettiness of like Jeff Smith's Bone, if it's going to be that basic. Bone got away with being a very basic story at points because it was so lovely and beautiful. And I just think that for me, as somebody who's not like a lifelong Usagi fan, I sometimes have a disconnect with how rough hewn it is and the lack of beauty. Okay, I don't read The Walking Dead Deluxe. I did read Web of Venomverse. Y'all, I loved this. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I mean, I know a lot of things that are wrong with me because I've been to therapy. But I don't know what's wrong with me when it comes to this. Sorry, I'm trying to make my plug happen. I don't know what's wrong with me that I like this so much, but I liked it so much. I know, 15 seconds just went by of me doing nothing. Life is hard. So why did I like it so much? I like it so much because I love the framing that Matt Groom gives this. And he did the same framing on the Spider-Verse series, which is that the web, in this case, the Venom web, is looking for a representative to fill out their team. And so it's kind of like flipping through realities, being like, this Venom, no, this Venom, no. So what that does is it gives us cover as a story to look at a bunch of Venoms that are just fun to read about and say, like, you don't have to care about that. We'll tell you when it's time to care about one, which I love because it gives these stories the permission to just be lightweight, funny, or creepy stories and have them really work without us getting too invested, because the story said, I'll tell you when to get invested. So this first one about a Venom mouse by Erica Schultz and Dylan Burnett on art with Jim Campbell's colors. Adorable. Loved it. So funny. And then the second one about a Venom who tried to bond with his universe's version of the Power Pack by David Dalmatian, who writes Creature Commandos for DC and Knights versus Samurai for Image. All fantastic, great script. You know that I'm obsessed with Juan Jose Rip on art, so of course I was going to be obsessed with, but great colors from Yen Nitro as well. Then we get to the one that we're supposed to care about, which is written by Matt Groom and colored by Chris Allen. And like, because I'd been hyped up this whole time, like, don't care about this one, don't care about this one, the actual thing that happened, that I cared about all three of them because it was so perfectly crafted. I am excited for Matt Groom to do more at Marvel. He's been around for a long time. He's written a lot of different stuff. He did some Power Rangers. He's been around. It seems like he's going to drive the Spider-Verse and Venomverse thing this year. It's clever. It's fresh. It makes me feel like he's actually got some interesting things to say and some interesting places to take me. And I of all things I thought I would appreciate this week, I did not think it was going to be a Venom anthology one-shot, but it just was so clever that it really worked for me. I don't know what else I can say. Wolverine 400. At this point, you have to think that I was so angry about having just read Ultimate Wolverine that there was no way that there was no positive outcome that was going to come from a 60-page Wolverine issue by Saladin Ahmed. So here's the thing I will say. His voice for Wolverine is great. The narration of Wolverine is great. It really sounds like Wolverine, and it feels like Wolverine. And I do think that this paid off things, which is important. It paid off the admin team plot, and it paid off the plot with his Wendigo kid. So it really feels like we completely got to somewhere, and issue 8/400 is a fine place to get somewhere. At least it's not going to take 19 issues like it did on Daredevil. That said, I just don't know how interesting any of the story is. It just, as opposed to some of these other writers that I've talked about, where it feels like they put trope before narrative, it feels like Ahmed almost like he's got voice and he's got narrative, but then there's just no like flair. There's just no like pizzazz. And it just feels like it just is happening, which is weird because when I think back to his Black Bolt, I think of a series that just was all flair, all pizzazz. It was just so remarkable. It was so fun to read. It just was so surprising every issue. But maybe that was a fluke, or maybe that was just the combination of him and Christian Ward, and it's not happening here with Martin Kokolo and Brian Valenza on colors. Maybe not, but so it's fine, and I'm happy to have it. It's a decent Wolverine comic. It's certainly not as bad as many Wolverine comics have been for the past decade, but it just is not exciting. Now, of course, what everybody was excited about was that there was a brief Wolverine story written and drawn by Daniel Warren Johnson here, with Mike Spicer as his colorist, and also Corey Petit lettering, who usually does not letter. Usually Daniel Warren Johnson always has Russ Wooten lettering him. So I that really stood out to me. Actually, lettering was good. So see, Corey Petit, it's not all bad. You just have a bad read in Ultimate Wolverine. I mean, this is a nothing story. It maybe was in continuity, maybe it's not. It's just a story about Wolverine being a samurai. That's it. But it's just so fresh. It was so cool. The art was so gorgeous. Daniel Warren Johnson just has an energy to him that just no one else has. It's really, it must be interesting to be in his brain. But the last time he did a whole series for Marvel, the Beta Ray Bill series, which is titled, I think, in trade paperback, Argent Star, it's incredible. So if you read this and you're like, oh, I wish I could have more Daniel Warren Johnson on Wolverine, and you have James Abel here saying, the few pages by Daniel Warren Johnson was the best Wolverine I've read in years, 1000% better than Saladin Ahmed. Also, happy 400. If you felt that way, you need to go read that Beta Ray Bill series, because the Beta Ray Bill series was legit. Wonder Woman. Okay, so we know that I do not like Tom King, and I do not like Tom King's writing. I do not like it on a boat. I do not like it in a moat. I do not like it in a jar. I do not like it from afar. But much like Saladin Ahmed, Tom King wrapped up a 19-issue first arc. And so I said, you know what? Great time to dip my toe in. I don't have to go read that arc and get angry about it. I'm just going to dip in my toe here for this first issue of this story. And it was one of the best Wonder Woman comics I've ever read. It was incredible. It's everything Woman that he has not been doing for the past year and a half. At the way that he used Batman. But first, let's talk about the art. Guillaume March in the 9-panel grid. We've seen a lot of people just be flustered by Tom King's 9-panel grid. How do you do acting or whatever? It just becomes very prescriptive. It's like show a face, show an action, show a face, show an action. And it just feels like some people get really stuck inside of it and they can't break out. I don't think Daniel Sampier, the regular artist in this, has that problem a lot, but we've seen it fell amazing artists before that Tom King has worked with. Guillaume March seems immune to it. He uses every panel to just give us such emotional moments, and then and he's coloring himself here. The colors, like, oh my, we know I'm a sucker for pink, so let's go to a page that doesn't just have pink. Batman in Olympus talking to Aphrodite, and just the way that Aphrodite is manipulating Batman, and the way that we keep like looking at Batman, and it's our perspective on him, but sometimes she's in the perspective, sometimes the perspective is from her perspective, sometimes it's behind her. Like, March just manipulates our feelings here, and I think that this tells me that King's scripts always have the ability to do this, but you need an artist who's not going to get so prescriptive about the 9-panel grid that it's going to, what am I trying to say? That they're never going to get to this playfulness. And March just starts with the playfulness, which is really, really incredible. And I just love this story. I mean, it places Hippolyta in Olympus, which is a development that's relatively recent, but you don't need to know anything specific to appreciate that. And a crime happens, and Wonder Woman's like, well, if I have a crime about my own mother, and it's a matter of life or death, I'm going to bring the world's best detective, Batman. And there's this great beat that King plays of like, does Batman care about gods? Like, if Batman has a meeting with Zeus, does Batman care? If Batman has a meeting with Aphrodite, does Batman care? And the answer is Batman may not hold gods in high regard, but certain gods demand his attention and respect more than other gods. And Wonder Woman to Batman is part of that pantheon of gods. it was just so smart. It was one of the best Wonder Woman issues I've read in my life. I've read a lot of Wonder Woman. Kid Crisis right now, she's reading my Wonder Woman Golden Age omnibuses. She read the entire first volume and almost all of the second volume. So every time she gets a certain amount of things done over school break right now, she gets to read another volume. I think she's going to be through omnibus volume 4 by the end of the week, which tells us, man, we could all be reading the Golden Age omnibuses that fast if we were motivated. And she's loving it. She's loving it so much. And I love this. It gave me the good feelings, happy, fuzzy feelings about Wonder Woman that I love to have, that I haven't had for a few years now. It hasn't been forever. There were some books during Rebirth of Wonder Woman I really, really liked, but this issue really, really made me feel some things. Joel the Geek saying, it's a banger. I left the Wolverine thing on the screen that whole damn time. Joel the Geek saying, it's a banger. And Superdrop saying, if I like Wonder Woman, also read Wonder Woman Dead Earth by Daniel Warren Johnson. Boy, did I hate that comic book. Whew. Major hate. Major super hate. So look, the internet's dying, but we're at the end, so it doesn't really matter. All you got to do is talk about X Factor and Youngblood, okay? Let's do it. X Factor. What do I have to say about X Factor? This was good. It was good. How was it good? Why was it good? I don't know. I do know. Because Havoc is not a comedy character. You can put Havoc in funny situations, but to put him in a straight up parody comic about capitalism doesn't work because Havoc has no relationship to that. But to use Havoc in this way, where he's been being used in a mission that's in the capitalist system, and he's there to kind of thwart capitalism, but also be used by capitalism, that actually works. And to have tension of Polaris facing off against Archangel and to see like which one of them is going to come out on top with their powers with each other, that actually works. It turns out when Mark Russell doesn't just try to write his capitalist dystopia joke that he always writes, and he just stops for a minute and writes an X-Men comic book, it turns out his X-Men comic book could have been pretty good. But unfortunately, he drove away all the fans with his terrible first arc, and so the fact that he's now delivered two issues in a row that have been pretty great, issues 8 and issue 9, actually issue 7 wasn't even that bad. It's just too little too late. So it really goes to show you, and we can't say it's about an art change up. It's been the same artist, Bob Quinn, all along, the same colors, Jesus Bertov, the same letter, Joe Camarada. I just think that this book is actually about X-Men and is not using its beloved characters as a joke anymore. It's still funny. There's still funny bits in it, but we're getting to take the characters seriously, which is what we all want. I still don't know who is giving Greg Land his instructions for the covers. There's no good porn he could have even traced this out of, so I don't know why, but like this is nothing that's actually an issue. There's been a whole string of Greg Land covers that he's just drawing things that have nothing to do with what's inside the issue. It's just very funny to me. Then we are finally coming to Youngblood Deluxe, which was, I can't believe I'm saying this, my image pick of the week. But this resolves a final theme that I had going this week, which was the theme of that really the alchemy of a specific creative team on a book matters, because on this book this is the original Youngblood 0 and Youngblood number 1 from 1992. They have been recolored by Matt Yackey, still all the original art by Rob Liefeld, and they've been relettered by Russ Wooten, but most specifically, they have been rescripted by Joe Casey. So I have every issue of Youngblood, except for one, which I cannot find because there is only 1,500 issues of it. I found somebody else on Reddit who's also looking for it. Now there's 2 of us, we're screwed. It's Youngblood Bloodsport, number 2, the Wizard World edition. That's the only Youngblood comic I don't own, okay? Anyway, back to topic. So I got out my Youngblood number 0 and number 1, and I was reading them side by side with this. It's not just lightly rescripted. It's not just like some of the things in each word balloon were like a little rephrased. It is a full rescript. Like more word balloons on some pages, less on other pages, more captions on some pages, other pages, characters having completely different conversations. And here's the thing. It is outstanding. It's like, it's still a 90s image comic book. It's still drawn by Liefeld, but it's like the top quality version of that. The team makes sense. Their relationships and conflicts to each other make sense. It explains why they're all so ornery. It explains how they really don't gel with each other and that there's clearly going to be dissensions in the ranks right from the beginning. It explains the geopolitical aspects. It's just, it clicks right from the beginning, which to me, again, a theme for me this week is sometimes it takes the right combination of things. Rob Liefeld, I hugely respect the guy, even though he's a little bit of a weirdo and he can say some mean things about some other creators sometimes because he's a great idea guy. I love Rob Liefeld's ideas about comics. I love the thoughts he comes up with. I love the plots he comes up with. Youngblood has always really worked well from an idea perspective. And I think that the thing always holding it back was that Rob was writing it himself. And seeing Joe Casey, who's not even one of my favorite writers, but I do think he can be a fun writer, work And the thing is, I think Joe Casey gets lost in the sauce of his plot sometimes. To see him stuck with someone else's plots and having to use every panel that was already in the book based on somebody else's plots, but to have to write new script to it, it just works. So if you've always wondered about Youngblood, like, what is it about? Was it any good? Was there anything attractive about it? This book, Youngblood Deluxe, which is this totally recreated version of Liefield's original art, this is the book to buy. I don't know if they're doing more than 3 issues. I've only seen 3 solicited, so we might only get through issue 3, so we might only get the original miniseries. Guess what? I think Liefeld should actually do this for every one of 90s Youngblood. Just reissue all of Youngblood with new scripts, because I found this to be a fantastic 90s comic book. And it really made me think of what's going on Spawn right now, and how, like, no matter what, it just has the lightly incoherent stink of Todd Father's writing on it. Todd, I love you. I'm not calling you a bad boss. I don't withhold my raise next year based on this. After you hire me, please hire me, Todd. But I just feel like, wow, there are combinations that could be happening in comics right now. We could find somebody who could be scripting Spawn, and Spawn would be good. Like that is a thing that could happen. And it just so happens that Joe Casey, who loves Youngblood and made a whole new comic of his own, Blood Squad 7, to basically tribute Youngblood. And since he started that comic, Liefeld got the Youngblood rights back and apparently went right to Casey's door and was like, hey, do you want to rewrite Youngblood for me? And it's working beautifully. So look, I'm not doing a song today because who knows if the internet's going to go out 5 times during the song. This has been an arduous stream. I asked myself, should I stream on Easter? And apparently the question was no. I don't know why the internet sucked so bad, but you know what? It's really nice that you were here through it, and you guys kept each other entertained while it was going up and down. You kept me entertained while it was going up and down, and it wound up being a good show because we did what? We resolved, and then we repaired, and then we recovered and had some fun. So God help you if you're watching this on rewatch. I'll put chapter marks in so that they can skip over all the black parts or purple, I guess, while I'm totally on the screen. It doesn't seem like you have a lot of questions because you haven't been chatting too much. But I guess I have been getting did you like me getting the comments as we went today? Was that a good strategy? Should I continue to do that? Because it was actually doable if the internet would freaking work. So I guess there's no comments right now. I'm not writing a song. So what is there to talk about? Okay, so I just want to talk briefly about what's going on Crushing Crisis. So next week is the Tiger Eyes poll. And that means on Near Mint Condition, the way that the Tiger Eyes poll works is that we can't just have everybody write in their most wanted Marvel omnibus as a suggestion, because there's thousands of voters now, and everybody has a different idea of what every book should be called and what every book should look like. And so that just does not work out very well. So instead, what we do and what we have done is we basically went and we mapped the entire Marvel universe, and we broke it into omnibuses that, from the perspective of Marvelites, Marvel zombies, Marvel lovers, make as much sense as they possibly can make. So that's what I've been doing behind the scenes, is looking at all the mappings we did last year and saying, wow, can we map some of these better? Can we map some of them differently? There's some things last year that confused people. There were some things that we titled badly. So this year I'm trying to go back, and I have an amazing team of Near Mint Condition fans and supporters and Patreon folks who have joined me in doing all this. And we're trying to make sure that every single book on the poll is a book that really makes sense, that you'll immediately know what it is from the title of it, and that you'll immediately be able to find the stuff that you want to vote on and have be your most wanted omnibus. So that is going to start next week. It is going to be streaming on Near Mint Condition, I believe. Right now, we think it's going to be April 28th, so just a mere 8 days away from now. And over the course of this week, I will be talking about some, maybe not all, but some of those books on Crushing Crisis. So you can see why we mapped them the way they're going to be mapped and what their contents will be. So that is it for me here. I'm wondering if I'm even streaming anymore. Nobody's talking. The numbers are counting, but I don't even know if I'm online. Oh, there, it's saying the internet is bad. So I guess that's the sign that I'm online. Well, I hope any of you could hear this. I'm sorry this is such a technical catastrophe today, but you know what? We still got to talk about comics, and we still love them. Until next week, be a good person in the world. Don't let the lack of internet get you down. Do let the lack of rights get you down. But please stand up for yourself. Stand up for the people that you love, and make it known that you love what you love. Because if we don't spend our time making it known that we love what we love, what are we even doing? I've been Crisis with a K, and this week, try not to have a crisis unless it's me and unless it's streaming in high quality. See you soon.